Okay.
So as I kind of mentioned in the little intro there, it is really important to understand that loans have differences. Now they also have similarities. Everything we talked about in the last session in 6.1 were the similarities. Every note has a promissory note. Every loan has a promissory note. And what's in that promissory note? Everything about doing what? Everything about repayment. Everything about repayment is in that promissory note. Every one of these loans is also going to have either a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on what state you're in. If you're in a lien theory state, which document is going to be used?
Mortgage.
If you're in a title theory state, which document is going to be used?
Deed of
Trust.
Deed of trust. But no matter which state you're in, they both accomplish the same thing. What is the goal of the mortgage or the deed of trust from the lender's perspective?
Collateral.
Oh, the property as collateral.
Collateral. Yeah. Here's the way, and I didn't say this on Monday, and I thought about it yesterday. I think about y'all when you're not even here. Isn't that nice of me? This stuff just runs through my brain all the time. I thought about, you know what I should say to them is, the borrower is actually making two promises. The lender's only going to hold them responsible for one. You don't have to live up to both promises when you take out one of these loans. You only have to live up to one. Which one would the lender prefer you live up to? The promise to do what? The note, pay the money back. The other promise is only there in case the borrower what?
Defaults.
Does not pay the money back as promised. And that's where the second promise comes in, and that's the collateral. So are we all feeling pretty good about that? Because that was the big basic stuff that we got out of the way in the last session.
Yeah.
So today, what we're going to start to do is take a much deeper dive into why a borrower would choose one loan over the other, why one path would make more sense in certain situations than another path. Remember, there are lots of choices for buyers. First of all, they don't even have to be a borrower. When do we not refer to the buyer as a borrower? When they're paying what?
Pay cash.
Cash. If you pay cash, we're just going to call you the buyer. Mm-hmm. And that makes all this simple. That's still how we finance the property, because financing just refers to how we pay the property, how we pay the seller for the property. Most buyers, though, are not going to pay cash, either from a lack of ability or a lack of desire. Remember, just because a buyer has cash doesn't mean they have to necessarily what?
Use cash.
They don't have to use all cash, right?
That is a test question, and I want to point it out. Does anybody remember what it's called when a borrower does that?
When they do what?
When they use somebody else's money.
When they use money rather than using their own money. Gotcha. And
yes. It's not financing. It is, but there's another word for it.
There's a specific word for it.
Leverage.
There you go. Leverage refers to the choice. Now, if you don't have a choice about borrowing money, it's not really leverage. You're not leveraging your position. You're taking the only path possible. But people that can afford to pay cash and choose to borrow money, they're making that choice because they feel like it's a better financial outcome to keep their cash. Listen, I've had people. Now, I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not giving you financial advice right now. But I've had buyers over the last 5 years who said, "Oh, I have the cash, but I don't want to spend it. I'm putting all my free cash in Bitcoin." Now, depending on what price they paid for the Bitcoin, could that have been a good idea? Rather than putting cash into their home, taking that cash and putting it into a Bitcoin purchase, depending on what price they bought the Bitcoin at. What do y'all think?
That could be good.
Yes.
Sure. Because if the Bitcoin has tripled in value during that time, take the increase in value in the Bitcoin and pay the house off. And you still come out ahead and you have no debt on the house. You see how that could work?
Yes.
Right? And so it is really important to understand that some borrowers make a choice to borrow money. And Seth is exactly right. That's something they love to test on. That's called leverage.
Yep.
The idea
it's
of
something
leverage.
that we touch on, but not I'm trying to make sure we touch on it more because I've had one person message me, Travis, and ask me what that is. It was actually in the student that I was talking to you about from
To
another class.
borrow, to culturally steal from my much younger cohorts, leverage is like a flex, folks. It's a financial flex. It is, I got it like that, but I'm still going to borrow the money anyway. It is showing off that you can pay cash, but choosing to do what? Borrow the money.
Leverage.
Borrow the money. That's exactly right. You know? I mean, here's the thing. We don't call it this, but leverage happens a lot. Are there people out there with like that black Amex card that has no credit limit that you can charge like $10 million on? Are there people out there like that?
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you that every one of them could pay cash for anything they wanted to buy. How many of you believe that? If you got one of those cards in your pocket, you could afford to pay cash for anything you're buying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then why do they not? Because they like the flex of it. They like pulling that black Amex card out and making sure everybody in the building sees that they have one because it's invitation only and no credit. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
That's leverage. That's choosing to, because when you pay with a credit card, aren't you choosing to borrow money? Right? See, a lot of people, and this is why we have to talk about this a little bit, because some of you come from the position of you borrow money because you have no choice. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a whole different subset of people out there that borrow money because they're looking at it as the better of two choices. They can choose, and they have chosen to borrow. That is leverage. Okay? Now, when you look at other choices, look at this third one right here. That's a weird one. Who can the borrower get a loan from?
The seller.
From the seller. In that case, the seller essentially functions two roles. They are somebody who has cash and you're borrowing money from them. Of course, then when you turn it around after they give you the loan, what are you using the cash they just loaned you to do?
Come back.
Buy their house. Reloan.
To pay them for the property. You're paying the seller with their own money when you do seller financing. That's what you're doing. They're handing you $200,000 as a loan, and you're using that money to do what?
Pay them back.
Not pay them back. You're using that to purchase the property from them.
Oh, okay.
And then you're going to pay it back over the next 20 or 30 years, just like you would any other loan. And I saw Alexa mouth it. I saw it out of her mouth. She said, plus interest. Amen. How many sellers do you think are going to charge a shit ton of interest to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely, they will. If you come to me as a seller and you say, well, I want to buy your house. Great. I ain't got no money. Boy, you better get out of my face. But wait a minute. What if I borrowed the money from you? If the answer is still, boy, you better get out of my face. But wait a minute. What if I would pay you 20% interest on that money I borrowed from you? Maybe we should talk about this thing now. Maybe we should have a more, is there a number at which if you find a seller that's got cash like that, it might make sense for the seller to lend the buyer money rather than having the buyer go get a loan from a bank?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Right? So that's a possibility. Don't make that more complex than it is. You're borrowing money. You're using the borrowed money to purchase the property. It just so happens that you're borrowing the money from the same person you're purchasing the property here. How many ever been to a buy here, pay here car lot? You ever heard of a buy here, pay here car lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Folks, that is seller financing. That's exactly what seller financing is. You're purchasing the property from the same people you're borrowing the money from. There you go. Madison said she's heard the terminology seller finance, but never really thought about what it is. Seller financed, owner financing, that's what we're talking about there. That's an option. It's not a very commonly used option. Why do you think that's not a very commonly used option? We'll start from the seller's perspective. Why do you think not many sellers are okay with this?
It's a higher risk on their
Yeah, risk.
Higher risk.
Plus, they don't get their money right away.
Higher risk, but more importantly, and Chris is on the hunt there, more importantly, most sellers need the what?
money.
Money.
They need the money
Need
too.
the money. They need the money, folks. What are they going to do? They got to go buy somewhere else to live, right? So unless they got enough cash laying around to go and buy themselves another property, or they can go out and get another loan to buy a property themselves, they need the cash. So most sellers are not in a position they can do this. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
So that eliminates a lot of it. What eliminates the rest of it for the most part from the buyer's perspective? What did I say you were probably going to have to do to convince that seller this was a good idea if you're the borrower?
Interest.
Pay a lot of interest.
Not just interest, but what kind of interest?
High amount.
Aye.
Very high interest. So most borrowers don't look at this as a good idea. They're like, why would I borrow money from the seller at 20% or 15% when I can go borrow money from the bank at 7% or 5%? Well, there's only one answer I can think of there, folks. Why would you borrow money at 15 or 20%? You can't get a loan from who?
The bank.
From the bank.
Bad credit score.
You is desperate. You is desperate. That's what it boils down to. So when you see seller financing, what do we almost always know about the buyer?
They can't get a regular loan.
They were desperate. They were desperate because it almost always means much higher payments because of much higher interest rates. Is that kind of connecting for everybody? Right? Okay. So that's an option, but it's not a very common option. Look at the next one here. Buyers can assume the already existing loan by taking over the payments and, importantly, the responsibility for repayment. In other words, not only am I buying the property from the seller, so let's use a couple of you if you don't mind. I'm gonna ask a couple of you if you don't mind. Christina, do you mind if we use you as a little guinea pig here? Okay. All right. I'm gonna spotlight Christina. Give me just a second. And Stephen, you mind if we use you?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna add a spotlight to you, and then I'm gonna stop my share here for just a second. So let's say that we have there we go. Did I not spotlight Christina?
I think we were doing it at the same time.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right, there we go. Now we got them both spotlighted. Perfect. So Christina has a property she wants to sell. Everybody with me so far?
Yes.
She has a great loan in place. And what I mean by a great loan is she has a fantastic interest rate. She's got like a 2.75% interest rate, which you can't get anywhere near if you're going out to finance today. It just doesn't exist. It did 2 years ago, but it doesn't now. So maybe Christina bought this house 2 years ago, or she refinanced it 2 years ago, and she's at 2.5%. Does that loan, with its associated much lower monthly payment, look very enticing to somebody like Stephen who's thinking about buying her property?
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
Yes, because if he has to go out and get a new loan for himself from a bank, he's not going to get that 2.5% interest rate. No. He's going to get a 4.5% or 5%, maybe even 5.5% interest rate. His payments are going to be hundreds of dollars a month more for the same property. And it's not like he's actually seeing any of that money. It's money going straight to the lender as what?
Yeah.
Interest.
Interest. It's just being lit on fire every month. Just wasted. Does that make sense for everybody? And Stephen looks at that and he goes, this is a damn shame. It's a damn shame. There's already a loan attached to the property. There's already a lien attached to the property. Why can't I just take over the payments that Christina is already making? Do y'all think that sounds like a great idea from Stephen's perspective?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it is. If Christina's okay with that. And perhaps even more importantly, if what very important party is okay with that?
Lender.
Christina's lender. Everybody has to be on the same page here. Now, let me show you something. I want to show you something. Stephen, Christina, do you have your whiteboard or a piece of paper or anything? If you don't, it's okay. But do you have yours around there? Okay, great. All right. Christina, I want you to write on that board $400,000. Stephen, I want you to write on your board $400,000. And I want you to both hold them up in front of you and show it to the camera. Okay? Now, they both have $400,000 in front of them. Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. That's the number they've agreed on as the purchase price.
Okay.
That's the number they've agreed on as the purchase price. That's why they got the same number on both their boards. Everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In other words, Stephen is going to pay Christina $400,000 for the property. Everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Christina, on your board, I want you to write down $325,000 debt. That's how much you owe on the property. Write down $325 debt. And hold it up to the camera if you don't mind. Okay? Perfect. Perfect. It's not focusing, but we know what's there. It pops in and out. We see it every once in a while. Okay? 325 debt. Okay? Let me ask y'all a question. If we gave her $400,000 in cash, would she walk away with $400,000 in cash, or is she going to have to pay off that $325,000 loan anyway?
Pay it off.
Pay it off.
She's going to have to pay it off anyway. So, Christine, I want you to draw a line under that, and I want you to write $75,000, because that's her, what's our E-word name for that? Her what?
Equity.
That's her equity. She has $75,000 in equity in that home. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Stephen paid her $400,000 in cash. She would walk away with $75,000 in equity. Everybody okay with that? Oh yeah, Jen, it's because you're blurred. That's what it is, Christina. Your blurred background is making it blur. Maybe if you hold it right in front of your, there you go. Look at that. Now we can see it. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Janet. Now, from Stephen's perspective, Stephen is looking at taking out a loan. Everybody with me so far? Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to make a down payment. He's always been planning to make a down payment. Everybody with me now? Okay. Stephen looks at borrowing money, and he's getting interest rates of like 4%, 4.75%, 5%. She's sitting there at 2.5%. Her payment's going to be much lower on her note. Make sense for everybody so far?
Yes.
At the end of the day, does Christina really care about getting $400,000 for the house, or does she simply care about walking out of that room with $75,000 in cash?
The 75.
25.
So, Christina, do me a favor. On your board, the way you're holding it right now, I want you to draw an arrow on that 325 debt towards Stephen. Draw it toward your left. Just take that 325 debt and draw an arrow pointing towards Stephen. Yep. Point it toward him. Point it toward him and put an arrow on the end of it. There you go. There you go. He is going to, how many of y'all are starting to see what's going to happen right here?
Yep.
We are transferring the debt from Christina to who?
Steven.
Stephen. Folks, he just borrowed $325,000. Except he never went to the lender to do it because the loan is already in existence. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Stephen now owes $325, and Christina owes how much?
Zero.
Zero. Nothing. Was Stephen planning to make a down payment?
Yes.
Yes. Is he still going to make a down payment?
Yes.
Yes.
Stephen, on your board, I want you to write down your down payment and draw an arrow and point it toward Christina. And I bet y'all can't figure out what down payment he's going to need to make this work for everybody, folks.
75,000.
He's going to need to make a $75,000 down payment that's going directly to her. If he takes and pays her $75,000 in cash, is she not walking out of the room with exactly what she wanted?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And have we not accomplished him owing money at a much lower interest rate than if he took out a new loan?
Yes.
Talk to me. Do we understand the loan assumption?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a loan assumption. Thank y'all both very much.
Do
Thank
you,
you.
do they just use a lawyer to rewrite up the, like, who writes up the new deed of?
There's not going to be a new note. The promissory note will stay the same. We will literally just take and put one line through the Christina's name and put Stephen's name on there. And everybody will accept that change. The lender will sign off on it, and Stephen will sign off on it, Christina will sign off on it. Everybody initials it. So now the promissory note stays exactly the same. Payment stays exactly the same. The amount of time to repay it stays exactly the same. Everybody picking up so far? Right? Okay. All of this stays exactly the same.
Is everybody approved for it?
What's that?
Is everybody approved for it? Or
Well, and there's a great question. Who do we say has to agree to this, Agnelli?
Lender.
The lender. Do you think part of that process is going to be the lender looking at Stephen's credit worthiness to make sure they're comfortable with him assuming this loan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what, when we say we got to get everybody's approval, they're going to look at him and make sure that he is capable of doing that. This is a win-win for everybody. Christina gets exactly the same amount of money she always wanted, and she gets rid of the debt. That's good for her, correct?
Yes.
Stephen gets the property. He still makes the same down payment he was planning to make. He just walks away having borrowed the money at a much lower interest rate than he would if he got a new loan right now.
Yeah.
Win-win. Who does it not benefit, though?
Lender.
The lenders. Because the lenders in general would much rather that loan be paid off
Yeah.
and that money borrowed again at the what?
Higher interest rate.
Higher interest rate. So are there going to be lenders that say, to this?
Yes.
Yes.
And we learned that. I see you, Jessica, and I'm coming. We learned that on Monday. And I saw it pop through the chat, and I apologize, I didn't see who said it, but
Natalie.
did we learn on Monday about a clause that the lender could put into the note that says, we ain't letting that happen. The minute Christina sells this property, this note must be satisfied in full. Don't even ask us about letting somebody assume this loan.
Yes. So,
Wonderful. That's going to be a test question for sure, right there. Understanding the relationship of the due on sale or alienation clause to allowing this to happen. Now, certain loans, and we're going to talk about this as we get in these loan types, certain loan types are assumable. Certain loan types are generally not assumable. But you can always tell if a loan's assumable by looking at the note and looking for what clause?
alienation.
Alienation or due on sale clause. We actually had this with a student who took the class recently, and Seth mentioned this on Monday, but now is a perfect time to mention it again. We had one of our students, she said, let me tell you what's happened here. My mom and I bought a house together. It's the craziest story I've ever heard. Not the craziest, but one of them. She and her mom bought a house together. Her mom talked her into signing the house over to just her mother. They bought the house together. The loan is in both their names. But her mom talked her into signing away her ownership, talked the daughter into signing away her ownership at some point. She didn't tell her daughter that's what she was doing. She just said, hey, I got some documents I need you to sign about the house, and had her daughter go to a damn UPS store at the notary in front of the UPS store and sign these documents. Mama is a thief.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was very sad, because it was sad watching the realization of this young lady of what her mother had done to her in this thing. So now, because here's what was happening. The girl never lived in the house anyway. She was helping her mama buy a house. But now here's the problem. Mama is renting the house out and not sharing the rent. Daughter is still making half the house payment. And she's saying to her mom, you got to give me half the rent. And her mom's like, I don't have to give you anything. You don't own this house. Which was true, because she had signed away her ownership.
Right.
But Travis is smart. See, Travis can out-evil the evil. When she told us this story, she said, how do I get out from under this? I said, do me a favor. Send me a copy of your promissory note. Go back through your documents that you signed at closing and send me a copy of your promissory note. And she did. What clause do you think I was looking for in there?
Alienation.
An alienation clause, because an alienation clause says if the ownership changes hands, the note has to be what?
Satisfied.
Satisfied. When?
On sale.
Either way,
Immediately.
immediately.
Immediately. Her note had an alienation clause in it, folks.
Oh, beautiful.
And so here's what I said you're going to do. You're going to go talk to your mama, that bitch. And here's what you're going to tell her. Your next phone call is to the bank. And they will foreclose, because you are in violation clearly of this promissory note. Does everybody agree they're in violation of the promissory note?
Absolutely.
If they've changed ownership and they haven't satisfied that note, they're in violation. What's the bank? And it was SECU. What do you think SECU is going to do instantly?
Right away.
Right away, contact their trustee and foreclose. So you call mama and you say, Mama, we're selling this house, and you give me half the money. Because if you don't, I'm calling the bank, and your ass is going to lose it anyway.
Yup.
They'll think, what do you think mama did?
Oh, she did it.
agreed.
She agreed. Does understanding this stuff matter, folks?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. Jessica, you had your hand up. You've been patient. Thank you.
So my question is, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, is how did Stephen know about, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name,
Christina's.
Christina.
How does he know about it? Because I thought that the promissory note is private.
Wonderful question. Wonderful question. I love this question. Jessica said, how does Stephen know that Christina's got such a sweet loan? Because that's her business, right? Nobody knows what your terms are with your lender. It's not public knowledge.
No.
Let me tell you how he knows.
Yeah.
Christina told him.
Okay.
She used it as a marketing feature for her property.
Ooh, okay.
If you're sitting in your home right now and you look at your note and you realize you don't have a due on sale clause, you know your note is what?
Assumable.
Assumable. You know your note's assumable. If you know that you have an assumable note at 2.5% interest, and you know interest rates are 4.5% or 5% on new loans right now, does that give you a leg up on the competition that's selling their houses that doesn't have assumable notes?
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. How did he know? She's got a sign in the front yard that says assumable note. Ask me how. And if she doesn't, her listing agent does. Okay.
Thank you.
Janet, size of bank does not really matter. Type of loan matters. And that's what we're going to talk about with assumability.
Can you request it? Like,
No, type of loan is largely going to dictate it. The type of loan you take out is going to dictate it. Okay. All right. So that gives you some insight into the idea of the assumption, which is one way buyers can pay. What do you think of these that we've listed here is by far the most common, though? Of all the ones we've talked about, what's the most common way that buyers pay for the property?
Lender financing.
Lender funding.
Yeah.
How about this one right here?
Yeah.
Having a lender.
Right? What's by far the most common? Don't make it harder than it is. Borrowing money from where?
Lender
Yep.
From a bank. And that's what we're going to focus on for the rest of this chapter. The other ones, you need to know they exist. You need to have a broad idea of how they work. But now we're done with them. Everything else that we're going to talk about is going to focus on the 98% of transactions, which are paid for with loans borrowed from banks. Does that make sense for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
All of that other stuff is rare. And some are more rare than others, but all of it is rare. Borrowing money from a bank is common. And so that's what we're going to spend the vast majority of our time focusing on. So we've talked about loan assumption. Now let's move on to borrowing money from the bank. Okay. Now, when you borrow money from a bank, the lender is going to dictate to the borrower a lot of things. But one of the first and probably the most important from the borrower's perspective that the lender is going to dictate, that the lender is going to say, this is something that you have to do, that you don't have a choice about. One of the most important is going to be how much of a down payment you need to make. That is absolutely going to be key to the lender. How much of a down payment needs to be made in this transaction? The lenders do not feel comfortable loaning out 100% of the property's value in most cases. I did not just say, and I don't want you to go, bah, 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 bah. Yes, there are loans where lenders lend out 100% of the value. They are rare, though. They are the exception. In the vast majority of cases, lenders want to see borrowers who have some skin in the game. Think about it. Who's more likely to pay you back? Somebody who made a substantial down payment or somebody who did sign and drive and never put one dime of their own money into the property? Who's more likely to pay you back?
The down payment.
The person who made the down payment, because they have more to lose.
Vested interest.
They have a vested interest. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
To establish how much of the property's value is going to be financed and how much is going to be cash, The lender needs to know the property's value. What process do you think the lender is going to use to determine a fair value for the property to base this loan on?
Loan to value ratio.
Well, the loan to value ratio is going to tell them how much of that value to lend, but what process
How
do
do
you
they
think
get
they're
there?
going to use to come up with the value?
Appraisal.
An appraisal. There you go. They're going to have an appraisal of the property conducted by a licensed appraiser. So when appraisals are done, folks, are they done for the benefit of the buyer, borrower, or are they done for the benefit of the lender?
For the lender.
Lender.
They are done for the benefit of the lender. They're absolutely done for the benefit of the lender. Now, the loan to value ratio is once we have that appraised value, what percentage of that value is the lender willing to lend? And here's the thing, folks. We always have to add up to be 100% of the property's value. If I'm borrowing 90% of the property's value, don't I have to make a down payment?
Yes,
Yes.
Of what?
of 10%.
Of 10%. Does that make sense for everybody? Does that immediately click for you now? Right?
Yep.
And so the lenders don't tell you what down payment you have to make directly. What they tell you is, this is what we will lend you. We will lend, and they tell you in percentage terms. We will lend you 80% of the purchase price, or we will lend you 90% of the purchase price, or we'll lend you 95% of the purchase price. That percentage is called a loan to value ratio, folks. It is simply the percentage of, so that's one you're going to have to define on the test. There are definition questions on the test, and they are some of the hardest ones because they're always about math. Turning numbers into words is one of the hardest things for test takers to do. This is a formula that you're going to have to deal with in words on the test, not just with numbers. You're going to have to do math and deal with it in numbers, but that's not enough. They're going to ask you, how would I calculate someone's loan amount? And then they're going to give you word choices of how you would. So look at the formula that's staring you in front of it. If you want to calculate someone's loan amount, if that's what they're asking you for here, what two other numbers do you need to know about that loan, about that process?
Market value and LTV.
You need to know the market value, and you need to know the loan to value ratio from the lender. You need the lenders. This is the percentage we will lend you. Is everybody with me on that?
Yeah.
So once you know the market value or the appraised value of the property, and you know the lender's percentage that they're willing to lend, what would you do with those two numbers to come up with the loan amount?
Multiply them.
You would multiply them. So make sure you can deal with that formula in words. Make sure you can say, I calculate somebody's loan amount by multiplying the value of the property times the loan to value ratio. And by the way, that's not the only way you can manipulate that. This is the beauty of the T-bar. Once you memorize it as a T-bar, and how do I memorize a T-bar? I just memorize the three things that are there, and then I memorize the one on top. Because it doesn't matter which order you put the ones in the bottom on.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? So if you say, okay, when I'm dealing with loans, I got loan amount on top, value on the bottom, and the loan to value ratio, right? Loan amount, value, loan to value ratio. Those are my three things, and which one's on top?
Loan amount.
Loan amount.
Now, if you do that 20 times in front of a mirror, you'll have that formula memorized. Don't tell me you can't memorize these formulas. You can. Here's the
So
beauty.
easy.
Here's the beauty. Once you've got it memorized, can you write it down on your whiteboard when they ask you a question about it?
Yes.
Yes. And then can you compare the answer choices to what you're staring at on the T-bar you just wrote down?
Yes.
Yes. So quickly. You have less than 5 seconds to answer, so get ready. But you have the formula staring in front of you. And I want you to answer in the chat. Okay? I want you to answer in the chat. You got 5 seconds. I would like to know somebody's loan to value ratio. How do I calculate that?
Loan amount.
Multiply it times, or
market value.
I would like to know somebody's loan to value ratio. So take out the thing I want to know and see what the two are left. You're left with, and then what do you do with them?
divide the loan amount by the market value.
Okay. So look at it. I want to know this one. Correct? Is that the one I want to know?
Right.
Yeah.
If that's the one I want to know, block it out. Block it out for me, Seth. Get rid of loan to value ratio. That's the one I want to know. Get rid of it. Because I have to work with the other two. There you go. And the other two are what relation to each other?
Side by side.
fine.
The other two are what relationship to each other?
Side by side.
They are not side by
Or you
side.
divide.
The other two, look at the one that they are top and bottom. See, this is the thing, and this is why I have to go through this. Some of you just will not accept how to read that formula. Get rid of the thing you're trying to solve for. Take it away. Put your hand over it, put your finger over it, erase it, whatever. You're only left with two other things in that formula, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And those two other things are either side by side or they are what?
Top and bottom.
Top and bottom. What are they? The two things that are here right now are what?
Loan
Top and bottom.
Top and bottom. So what is our math going to be?
Divide.
Division. Loan amount divided by market value. Okay, you can unblock it, Seth. You got 5 seconds to answer. I want to know the market value of this property. What's your math going to be? I want to know the market value of this property. Follow those steps. Take away the one I want to know. See what you are left with. And then what does the formula tell you to do?
Loan amount divided by
divided by
loan to value rate.
Valuation.
There you go. Loan amount divided by loan to value ratio. Is everybody okay on how to read the formulas and how to manipulate the formulas in words?
Yep.
Okay? You just get rid of the thing they're asking you for. It only leaves you with two left. And then their relationship tells you what to do with those two. You're either dividing or you're multiplying. That's it. Okay? So make sure you can manipulate that in words, because that's a very commonly mistyped question. So look at this now with numbers. It says the home's being purchased for $425,000. The buyer's obtaining an 80% loan to value mortgage loan at 5% interest. What is the loan amount? A couple of things to understand. Whenever you're dealing with finance math, you're going to get numbers that simply don't matter. That's why you have to know the formulas.
Right.
Does this interest rate have anything to do with how much we're borrowing?
No.
No. So what are we going to do with that interest rate?
Get rid of it.
Ignore it.
Get rid of it. Throw it away. It's garbage. But here, and I've had people say, but how do I know it's garbage? Because you've got to know the formula. Look at the question. What is the question asking you for?
What's the loan amount?
What's the loan amount? Folks, if you memorize every formula in this class, I will 100% guarantee you that there's only one that has the words what in it.
Loan amount.
Loan amount. And that means that's the formula you use. That's the other thing people ask me all the time. How do I know which formula to use? I don't know which one to use. Newsflash. You take the thing they're asking you for and you use the one formula that has that thing in it. Because they're not duplicated in any of the formulas. Is that clicking with you now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? People say to me all the time, I don't know what formula to use. Here's what I just heard. I don't know the formulas.
Yep.
Because if you know the formulas, you always know which one to lose. Because you're going to mentally shuffle through. You're going to be like, oh, there's the one with the words loan amount in it. That's the one I need to use. Mm-hmm. But you've got to have them memorized for that to work. There's only 8 of them, I think. So it's not like there's some huge number. Okay? There's not a huge number of formulas. So if they want to know the loan amount, get rid of loan amount. So it's going to block it out for us. Right? Get rid of loan amount. What 2 things are we left with?
Market value and the LTV rate.
And the loan to value ratio. Did they give us those numbers?
Yes.
Yes.
They did. What did they tell us the market value of the property was? Even though they didn't use those words.
425.
25, because the market value is the same thing as the purchase price, right? When we're selling the property.
Right.
Okay? $425,000. And did they tell us what the lender's maximum lending
Yeah.
was?
Yes.
Yes, the 80%.
80%. By the way, Nisha, I'm glad that helped, right? That's why we go through it. That's why we go through it. Because it really is. That's the way you use formulas, right? That's why they're called a formula. They're supposed to be helpful, not a hindrance. So I got 2 things left. They're side by side. What am I going to do with those 2 numbers? Multiply them. $425,000 times 80%. Which, if you're typing it in the calculator, is just as simple as 425,000 times 80 divided by 100. Because remember, percent on any calculator, you can just you change the percent sign into divided by 100. That way, here's why I'm doing it that way. I know you might have a percent sign on your calculator. I like using the percent sign myself. What if nightmare happens and somebody tells you you can't use your calculator that day and they make you use the one on the computer? or they make you use theirs that they hand you, and it doesn't have a percent button on it.
You got to know how to do it.
This method works on every single calculator. Okay? This method works. You are supposed to be able to take your basic 4-function calculator into the test site. They are supposed to let you use it. That happens the vast majority of the time. But I'm just telling you, those people that work there, they're working there for $18 an hour, folks, to watch people take tests. And if they misread on there, and they're not just giving the real estate exam, they're giving a bunch of different exams, and they all have different rules. Some of them say you can't use a calculator at all. I don't really want you relying on that person to decide if you can use the calculator you want to use. I want you to be able to use any calculator they hand you. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. And this method will work on any calculator of any type because it doesn't depend on a percent button. Just FYI. Okay. If you want to move decimals, that's fine with me too. Okay? Yes, absolutely, Eric. You can absolutely move decimals because when you do divided by 100, if you type 80 divided by 100, what does the calculator tell you?
0.8.
0.80, right? It's the same thing. You're just moving the decimal. This, to me, is just a foolproof method for people who struggle with the whole idea of moving decimals and how many places to move the decimal. And, it's like percent. Per means division. Cent means 100, always. So percent means divided by 100 every time you see it. Okay? So in that same question, if we've calculated the loan amount, don't forget what we just calculated. That's powerful. We calculated the loan amount. Haven't we kind of reverse calculated the down payment as well? Even though we weren't really asked to calculate the down payment, haven't we really kind of calculated somebody's down payment as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, because it's the rest. Right? If you think of it this way, if somebody's coming up, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If somebody's coming along and paying $425,000 for the property, and they're borrowing $340,000 of that, doesn't it stand to reason that the rest of it has to come from cash?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? The rest needs to be cash or down payment. So how much is the cash down payment? Now, you could do it the long way and do times 20%, but here's what I would do. Doesn't it make sense just to go 425 minus 340?
Yes.
85%.
85,000.
$85,000. So that's what it's going to take to close that loan for that person. They're borrowing 340, right? They're borrowing 340, and they're bringing $85,000 in cash. Talk to me. Are we understanding that? Because that is very foundational to understanding how these loans function. We all good? I don't leave you on. Good. Okay. All right. Good. So when you look at these loans, and you've seen this slide before, it's just a reminder from the other day. When you look at these loans, as the loan to value gets larger, the down payment gets what? Smaller. And as the loan to value gets smaller, the down payment has to make up the difference, so the down payment gets
Larger.
In other words, the more somebody borrows, the less they have to bring in cash. The lower the loan amount they're qualified for, the more they have to bring in cash. Is it Shirley, right? I believe that's right. Yeah, Shirley.
I always forget to unmute. Yes, thank you. I just want to go back to what we were just talking about with the loan to value, the 425. So if I do the 425, and since it says 80%, so I do the 80 and percent, so I do 80 divided by 100, come up with the 0.8, and then times it by the 425. Naturally, I come up with the 340, but is the way I'm thinking of it always going to work?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Will work every single time.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So when we talk about the equity piece, we're really just flipping and looking at the other side of the spectrum from the debt piece. Learn to flip those instantly. When you hear 80% loan to value, what should you instantly think in the back of your mind? They're putting what?
20%.
Down in cash, right? You should automatically think of both because you never really know which one you're going to be dealing with. But the relationship is they have to add up to 100%. And so even just getting to that understanding is huge. As we mentioned the other day, equity is the amount of cash value that the owner has in the property at that moment. Not looking backwards in time. It's not about, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Equity is about today. But there is one day where equity is exactly the same as the down payment. What's the one day where the equity is exactly the same as the down payment?
The first day they buy it.
Day one, the day they buy the property, closing. The day they take out the loan, day one, the equity and the down payment are exactly the same thing. And after that, you have to look at, okay, well, what could I sell it for? How much do I owe? And compare those two numbers. And it changes day by day, week by week, month by month. Okay? I'm not sure who that is, so I'm just going to hit mute on. Sorry, I didn't mean to get you, Seth.
It's okay.
So now when you look at affording a loan, there are two factors that lenders really look at heavily when deciding whether to make a loan. I'm going to give you just a second here because I want you to really think about this. But I want you to put it in the chat. And I want you to say it out loud. I want you to put it in the chat. What do you think? And you got two shots because I said there were two factors that lenders really care about when they're deciding whether to make a loan or not make a loan. What do you think is, I want you to name one of the two most important factors in lenders making a loan or not. You said down payment or equity, I have something for you.
Okay, but nobody said that.
They did. Some of them said down payment or equity.
I didn't see it.
If you said debt to income ratio, affording that monthly payment, how much debt they have otherwise, I have something to say for you. If you said credit score, and I need to go through that. We have heard that lie so many times that people have internalized it. Folks, that is the last factor that a lender cares about. That doesn't mean they're not going to look at it. If they have two relatively equal borrowers, credit score might determine the difference between the two of them. But the biggest factors they look at are first, how much equity this borrower has. Because again, the more equity they have, the more likely they are to do what? What do y'all think? The more equity they have, the bigger down payment. You got to do this yourself. You got to walk yourself through this. What are they more likely to do over the course of that loan if they put more money in themselves?
Pay it back. Keep the loan.
Get back. And isn't that what the lender's trying to determine when they're making a loan, if you're actually a good candidate for paying it back?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That is the number one criteria, folks. The amount of the down payment. Right away, somebody who does not have much of a down payment, have they put themselves behind the 8 ball qualifying for a loan?
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Number one factor. The number two factor is not credit score either. The number two factor is the debt to income ratio. Because again, if you are trying to predict whether or not somebody is going to pay you back, isn't it worth knowing how much other debt they have and how much they're paying every month toward that other debt? Is that a worthwhile thing to know if you're the lender?
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what debt to income is. If you look at somebody and they're coming to you, and if you're the loan officer and Stephanie walks into your office and she applies for a loan and she's got perfect credit. She's got that 850 credit score because she got a credit card in high school.
I know that's right.
right? And she's been paying it off. Her mama put her on there as an authorized user so she could help boost. Y'all know these babies need help with their credit. How many people you see on that shit on Facebook all the time, every day? And it might be worthwhile. I'm not saying it's not. But folks, they're still going to get denied for these loans. You have not helped them buy a house. You want to help them buy a house, save what for them?
Down payment.
A down payment. Because that's what that lender's looking at first. Because Stephanie's going to walk in with that 850 credit score. And she's going to say, well, I don't really have much of a down payment. Lender's going to go, And then she's going to say, well, my credit's great. And the lender's going to go, well, how about your other debt? Who else are you paying? And she's going to get all excited. She's going to say, oh, I pay everybody on time. My student loan payments are $250 a month. I pay those on time. My car payment is $600 a month. I pay that on time. I got a belt charge card. That's $150 a month. I pay that on time. I got my Chase Visa. That's $300 a month. I pay that on time. I'm a good payer. And that lender's going to say, you are for them, but you sure as shit ain't getting our money. Because you got too much what already?
Debt. Too much stuff.
Her debt to income ratio is too high. Exactly, Shannon. Shannon's like, how you going to pay me? It's great you paying all them, but you out of money. Does that make sense what the debt to income ratio is there now? Yeah. Right? And Seth said he feels personally attacked. Those are the factors that lenders look at. They look at down payment and then they look at debt to income ratio. Now, of course, eventually they will look at credit score, but they're looking at those two factors first in deciding whether you qualify. And it's really important that you understand that's also when we say that somebody's qualified for a loan and the question is how much, guess how the lender sets that number? Guess how they say how much of a loan somebody's qualified for? They use their debt to income ratio. They say, okay, well, this amount of loan would equal this payment, and we feel comfortable they could make that payment, so we'll lend them that much money. Mm-hmm. By the way, as interest rates go up, do monthly payments go up for the same amount borrowed?
Yes.
Yes.
Does that reduce the buyer's purchase power? Does that reduce the amount of money the lender's willing to lend them because borrowing the same amount of money now has a higher monthly payment? Yes. That screws with loan to value. That screws with debt to income. All those things. Absolutely. So lenders are going to look at that total percentage of income that's being spent toward debt. And that's going to be a big determining factor in whether or not they make this loan. Once they've decided, okay, we're going to give Stephanie the loan. We feel comfortable. She's got all those payments, but she's making $100,000 a year. So we feel comfortable that she can afford another payment. Mm-hmm. She's not just going to pay back money borrowed. Lenders do not exist for our benefit. Lenders are not your great Aunt Sally, who's going to loan you $100 and only expect you to pay back $100. That's not the way a lender works. If you borrow $100 from a lender, it's only because they expect to get $150 or $200 back. Mm-hmm. What do we call that overage, that extra money that we end up paying to the lender over the course of time?
Interest.
It's called interest. Interest is the daily charge. Notice I said what? It's what kind of a charge?
Daily.
It's a daily charge. Folks, if you have a mortgage note right now, interest is racking up on what kind of a basis? Daily. It is accruing or building up daily on that note. It is calculated, built up, accrued daily on that note. So here's the thing. If you ask somebody what they owe to pay off their note yesterday, it's a different number today. Yep. It's gone in what direction just since yesterday? Up. If you want to pay that note off today, it'll cost you more than paying it off yesterday. And tomorrow will be even more expensive.
Yep.
Because this interest is accumulating, building up on a daily basis for these lenders. So that's important. Why am I hammering on that? Not for the evil factor of it, but because when you start doing math in this class with interest, there's going to be a big temptation to use annual interest numbers. There's going to be a big temptation to use monthly interest numbers. Those numbers really don't mean much in our world because interest is actually built up on what kind of a basis? Daily basis. So if you've got yearly interest, the first thing you need to be thinking about is I need to divide that down into daily. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Because almost everything we do with interest deals in daily because that's the way it builds up. Now, that monthly payment is going to consist of a lot of interest. 30 days worth of interest on that monthly payment, right? 30 days worth of interest. But there is also another component to that monthly payment. Don't we have to pay something toward the actual debt here?
Yes.
Right. So when you make a monthly payment, and they are all monthly, on these mortgage notes, we call that the PI payment or the debt service payment.
Right.
Debt service payment or PI payment. Here's what that means, folks. It is simply the total monthly payment that's going to be made by that borrower. And by the way, that payment usually stays the same throughout the term of the loan. What's
Right.
about the only thing you can think of that would change the monthly payment made on that loan throughout its term?
Interest.
I was gonna say unfixed.
What do you think would change the monthly payment?
The down payment?
Down payment.
That's not, the down payment's made at the beginning. I'm saying what could change the payment some point midway during the repayment?
If it was an
Interest.
loan.
The interest rate does what?
Changes.
Increases or
Interest
decreases.
rate increases or decreases. Because that's the only thing that can change. The amount borrowed doesn't change. You're slowly but surely paying that down. But could the interest change if you have an adjustable rate loan?
Yes.
Yes. But most loans are what we call fixed rate loans. And if you have a fixed rate loan, what is that payment going to look like month after month after month after month?
The same.
Same exact amount. Here's what's interesting about that though. Just because the payment is the exact same amount does not mean it is being broken down in the exact same way every month.
Right.
Because as time goes on and this borrower starts to make a dent and paying down this loan balance, they will owe less and less interest for every day of that month. Does it make sense to you all that every day of the month of September is a little bit cheaper on interest than every day in the month of August was?
Yes.
Does that make sense for y'all?
Yes.
I'm going to say it again. The interest for every day in September is a little bit cheaper than the interest for every day in August. Why?
1 day difference.
No, I'm saying if you not 1 day difference. But okay, 1 month difference, but what makes a difference? Why do I owe less interest for September the 10th than I owed for August the 10th?
Paid that.
Because those payments that you've made.
Principal.
Because
Principal way down.
when I was calculating my interest, folks, in August, wasn't I using a higher loan amount than when I'm calculating my interest in September?
Yes.
You made
If I owe them more money, then the interest for those days is more what? More expensive.
Right.
So when I make my payment in September, and this is where you all really have to retrain your brain about how you think of this stuff. When I make my monthly payment in September, every day of September is cheaper than every day of August was.
Yes.
Slightly, but every day is slightly cheaper because the interest is slightly less per day in September. And guess what? In October, every day will be what?
Less than September.
Slightly cheaper than the same day was in September.
And Travis, it's almost like as if you loan somebody $20 and you have 2 or 3 months to pay them back. And for every month, however much you owe them, they're charging you like 5 or 10% interest. When you pay
Exactly
the first
right.
month.
The first month I got to pay interest on the whole $20. The second month I only may pay interest on $15 because I've paid them down.
Right. You pay it on the outstanding amount that you have left to owe.
That's exactly right. And because we have paid that loan balance down from August to September, we're going to owe less interest for the month of September. Is everybody okay with that statement? Because you need to be okay with that statement. Do not
Yes.
sit there and zone out. I will
Right.
put you on the spot today. If I see your eyes wandering, if I see you not participating, I will blow you up today because you cannot zone out on financing.
I agree. And if you don't understand this, you better speak up right now because
Right.
this cannot go under the rug.
It has to be done, and these building blocks are so expensive. Does everybody understand why September the 10th is cheaper than August the 10th was?
Yes.
Everybody good with that? Good. Now, here's the follow-up to that. I'll get to Janet in just a second. I'm coming.
Got you.
Thank you. Here's the follow-up to that question. Is the September monthly payment going to be less than the August monthly payment?
No.
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 But if the interest is cheaper
Or principal.
and the payment stays the same, what happens with the extra money then? If I don't owe as much interest and they didn't lower my payment, what happens with the extra money?
Goes towards your principal.
They give it to you.
It goes toward the principal. So is it fair then to say that I will pay off more of the debt in September than I paid off in August?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because I made the same payment and less of it went toward what?
Principal.
Toward interest.
Interest.
So therefore more of it went toward
The principal.
principal. Okay, Janet, you had your hand up.
Well, and that's the same thing if you pay extra, right? It just more goes to the principal.
Of course, if you make quote unquote, if you're paying extra, you don't pay extra interest. Who would do that? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in the world. You give them exactly what you owe them in interest. So if you're sending extra, you want it applied toward what?
Principal.
The principal. Right.
And then my real question was, I remember learning at some point that real estate always does a 30-day calendar, but that's
We're
not
gonna-
the same
we're-
for paying.
We're gonna talk about how we calculate the calendars. Yeah, we're getting there. Okay. Are we all understanding the basic fundamentals that month by month, the same day is cheaper than it was the previous month from an interest perspective? Is everybody okay with that statement?
Yep.
Yes.
Now, when we say cheaper, folks, I don't mean if August the 10th there was $52 in interest, and then on September the 10th it's going to be $12 in interest. I mean, if on August the 10th it was $52 in interest, then on September the 10th it's going to be $51.98 in interest. You know,
Right.
it is going to be a very slow decline because we're paying off this loan very slowly. It's going to take us how long to pay the loan off?
30 years.
30 years.
3 years in most cases. So we are absolutely paying this thing down very slowly. So Christina, what do you not understand about daily interest quite yet? That means somebody comes to knock on your door every single morning and says, you owe us interest for yesterday. That's what daily interest means. Does somebody not come knock on your door every single morning and say you owe us interest for yesterday?
No.
Oh,
Unless you-
and is it fair to say they just bill you at the end of the month for all those days?
Yes.
There it is. That's all we're saying, is that you owe interest as a borrower on a daily basis. You may make a payment monthly, but the interest that you owe is building up or accumulating daily. They add another amount every day. You owe more today than you owed yesterday. Yesterday, I only owed how many days of interest for the month of September so far, as of yesterday?
What are we?
13.
15. Today, I owe what?
14.
15 days of interest. Tomorrow, I will owe 15 days of interest. Every day, the amount of interest that's outstanding goes up by a day. Until I do what?
Paid off.
Until I make a payment.
Make a payment.
When I make a payment, when they send the bill collector around to make a payment, how much of the interest that I owe on that loan at that moment am I going to have to pay?
30 days?
30 days.
Every bit of it, folks. Every bit of it.
Trick question.
Every bit of what I owe. But I only owe how many days worth at the end of the month?
30.
30. Because guess what I did the month before?
Paid it.
Made a
I
payment.
paid all the interest off the month before. I paid the interest down. I didn't pay the loan down to zero, but I paid the interest down to what?
To zero. Travis, that's a really important point. So, with the loan amount, however much you took out, let's say $400,000, that's going to be like a big pile of cash that the lender's just waiting to receive. But every single month, your interest, it's not the same visual that you should have in your mind. You should have a glass that's empty, and over each day of the month, it just keeps filling and filling and filling. And it's based on how much left you
And
owe.
at the end of that month, you got to empty that glass. That's
Empty
the
the
interest
glass.
glass.
It's
Here's-
always
Here's
refilling
what
and
Seth
empty.
is telling you. We get to pay off the $400,000 over a long period of time. That's the principal.
Right.
You do not get to pay off the interest over a long period of time. How often are they going to expect interest to be paid in full? Every penny that we owe of interest paid in full.
Every month.
At the end of the loan.
Every month. At the end of the month. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
End of the month, they're coming to collect their interest, and they want every penny of interest you owe them up to that point. And assuming you're current, how many days of interest is that going to be? 30 days, because it's been 30 days since you paid them the last time.
Yeah, Nisha's question, I'm not necessarily mad at it, but I don't want you to mix up the term.
I
that
do
you
not
just
want
put
you
in
to
the
think
chat.
of it as prorating, because again, Nisha, you don't know what that means. That's just a term that you've heard thrown around incorrectly your whole life.
Yes.
And so that's why I don't want you to think of it that way. I don't
We say it
want
with
you
love.
I don't want you to tie good knowledge to garbage knowledge. And what you brought in here with you was garbage knowledge, because we don't prorate when we rent. That's not a proration. It's a
We don't
misuse.
raise no wimps.
It's not. So that's what I'm saying. I understand where you're going with it. Okay. So John said, so interest depends on the total principal at the end of the month. Correct. I'm figuring out my daily interest based on how much money I owe on the loan at the end of the previous month. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Whatever loan balance so every day of interest that I pay for this month, September, is based on my loan balance from the end of what? August. They're going to take that loan balance and they're going to calculate interest every single day. And then at the end of September, they're going to come collect how much of that interest that's been building up every day.
All of it.
All of it. Now, are they going to collect all the principal as well, or are they just going to collect some small amount?
Very small.
Small
Just
amount.
collect a small amount toward the principal, and then they're going to start calculating interest again on a daily basis. But now they're calculating it on a smaller principal. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
So the days in the following month are a little bit cheaper. John, you're chasing your tail. What if you pay a month in advance? There's no such thing as paying a month in advance. That's you telling yourself you're paying a month in advance. In a loan, you're paying one of two things: principal or interest. That's it. You can only pay the interest you owe at any given point. Anything you
Right,
pay
because-
above that is going to credit toward what?
The principal.
Toward the principal. Simple as that.
The payment's going to come regardless how much you pay.
That's right. Your payment is structured to have a certain amount go toward interest and a certain amount go toward principal. And it's timed to pay it off in the amount of time that you borrowed the money. That's the way they work. Obviously, if you make extra payments and you don't owe any more interest, they're going to credit those extra payments toward what?
Principal,
For the principal, which means you're paying off the loan significantly faster.
which means you owe less interest on your principal balance.
It also means the following month, you're going to pay even less in interest because you've paid the principal balance down. Okay?
Rose, same thing.
Rose, there's no such thing as paying in advance on a note. Stop it with that. It doesn't work that way because you can't pay the biggest component of this payment. What is the biggest piece of this payment? Interest. And you
Interest.
don't pay interest in advance. You pay interest in arrears. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about that. You pay interest for stuff for the time that's already passed. So I can't pay payments in advance. In fact, I would not want to. Why would I want to pay them interest before I owe them interest? So if I am sending them the equivalent of 3 payments right now, what I'm actually doing is paying off all the interest I owe as of right now, and all of the rest of that is going to be credited toward my what?
Principal.
Or my principal. Most importantly, I still owe my monthly payment next month. That's why there's no such thing as paying in advance. They're still going to expect that minimum monthly payment the following month. Does that make sense for everybody?
Right.
You can't say, oh, but I sent you 3 months in June. And they're going to be like, yeah, and we credited that towards your principal.
Right.
You better pay us
Your
next
payment
month.
is your payment.
That's right. That doesn't go away, right?
That
That's
payment's
why
going to stay the same.
And I see that you're smiling about it. That's why I have to be really strict about that, because there is no paying in advance on a note. It just doesn't work, right? This is the way payment cycles work on all these loans, and we just use that terminology so incorrectly. So obviously, since the loan payment on a monthly basis is composed of principal and interest, the higher the interest rate, the higher the monthly payment has to be to account for that. Does that make sense for everybody? Because if you're borrowing the same $400,000, well, that doesn't change paying it back over 30 years. $400,000 is $400,000. That's the same payment. But if I'm paying 5% interest on that $400,000 versus 7% interest on that $400,000, does the monthly payment have to change significantly to account for the higher interest rate?
Yes.
Yes.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Okay. So when you look at lenders and interest rates, the biggest impact on the monthly payment, even bigger than the amount you borrow, quite honestly, is the interest rate, right? The interest rate is the biggest thing. So borrowers, and understandably so, want to lower their interest rates. Do y'all think that's a fair statement, that borrowers want to lower their interest rate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. To do that, though, the lender is giving up income. I mean, why would a lender give you a 5% interest rate when they could charge you a 6% interest rate and still be competitive? Now, they can't charge you a 6% interest rate if you can get 5 other places, because you would just go somewhere else and get 5. Right? I mean, think about it like comparison shopping for anything else. If you go and you get pre-qualified for a loan and they give you a 6% interest rate, and you go to another bank and they pre-qualify you and they give you a 5% interest rate for the same loan, you're not talking to Mr. 6%.
Right.
But what if you get pre-qualified from 3 different banks and they all tell you 5%? Here's the real question. Might the borrower want that rate to be 4.5 instead of 5?
Yep.
Yes.
Why?
Better payments.
Makes their payment what?
Lower.
Cheaper.
It makes their payment much cheaper on a monthly basis to have a lower interest rate. Does that make sense for everybody? So in a vacuum, lower interest rate is better. What if I told you that lenders will let you pick your own interest rate? What if I told you that any lender in this country is perfectly happy giving you that 4.5% interest rate, even when they've quoted you 5? All you got to do is ask for it. Isn't that nice of them?
Yeah.
And pay ahead of time.
Oh, you got to pay?
Yeah.
Something sounds fishy.
It is very fishy. Natalie said for a small fee. I'm going to take the word small out. How about for a large fee? Because when you're asking the lender to reduce their interest rate, you're asking them to accept lower payments for a very long time. Does that make sense for everybody? What's the only way you can convince people in any business endeavor to accept lower payments for a very long time? Give them what up front?
Money up
Large
front.
sum.
Cash up front.
Money up front.
Money up front. Cash
Show me
up
the
front.
money.
Now, here's what I want you to understand. We are not talking about a down payment. We are not talking about equity here. We are not talking about money that's going to be credited toward the purchase price here. We are talking
We're talking about money going down the drain.
We are talking about money being lit on fire and handed over to the lender. We are talking about a money that is a complete fee. It does not impact the loan balance. It does not impact how much you're purchasing the property for. It is literally just a fee, a non-refundable, give us our money right now fee that you pay the lender in exchange for them doing what favor for you as a borrower? What is the lender doing?
Lowering the
Giving
rate
less
for
money.
interest rate.
Giving you the lower interest rate. They're giving you the lower interest rate that you want. Now, here's the thing. Could that be a good thing for the borrower? I mean, could that work out in the borrower's favor?
Yeah.
It could. I mean, it depends on how much the payment goes down. Would that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Depends on how much they want for the fee and how much the payment goes down. I mean, I have to make this decision every time I travel to teach. Every time I travel to teach, when I go in the Hilton Honors app to book my hotel room, there'll be 2 choices about the hotel room there. Do I want the Hilton flexible rate for $237 a night? Or do I want the cash prepaid rate for $217 a night? What's the difference? The cash prepaid rate, I can't do what?
Cancel.
I can't cancel it. I can't get a refund. It's got terms and conditions. But if I'm willing to commit to it right now and give them their money up front, I can ultimately save money by paying less, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
But that only saves me money if I actually go on the trip and I actually stay in the hotel. If I end up having to cancel, doesn't choosing that option end up costing me big time?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, that's the danger. That's the risk. Discount points are very much the same thing, folks. The lender is saying to you, you want the lower monthly payment? Fine. We'll give you the lower monthly payment. But you got to pay us this non-refundable fee up front right now on the day you borrow the money. And you know what? If you don't keep this loan long enough to make your money back, that's all on you. How do we feel about that?
Mhm.
Okay. Alexis, you had your hand up. No? Okay. All right. Well, yes, you do have your hand up, but no, you don't need anything. That's all right. Seth will take it down for you. So when you look at, and as Janet said, it's like airline tickets, right? You get a couple of options on how to purchase them. We do it with almost everything. Think about gym memberships.
Yep.
When you go to the gym, don't they offer you multiple options? You can pay monthly for this price, but you can cancel at any time. Or you can pay for 6 months up front and it works out to be this much per month. Or you can pay for a year up front and it works out to be this much, right? Well, if you're going to use the gym for the whole year, that's obviously the best deal. But what if you pay for the whole 12 months and then 2 months later you stop going to the gym?
Right.
You got screwed. Discount points the same way, folks.
Yep.
Completely non-refundable. Someone private messaged me a question that said, discount points are non-refundable cash. Yes, absolutely. And when are they paid?
Up front.
Up front. From the borrower to the lender up front. What if that borrower decides 2 months later that they want to refinance? Are they going to get any of that prepaid money back? No. What if they sell their house a year later? Are they going to get any of that prepaid money back? No. The lender is going to sit there and say, you know what? That was your choice. We were perfectly happy to give you this lower payment for 30 years. That's what you paid for, and that's what we agreed to give you. We can't help that you decided to sell the house and pay the loan off. So sad. How many of y'all think this is the biggest scam in the world right here based on that, folks?
Sounds like it, but it's legal.
30 years.
Very much legal. Because the truth is, it takes about 8 years to break even on the savings of these things. It takes about 8 years of making that lower payment to break even with the fee that they are going to charge you. Now, if you know you're going to keep the loan for 30 years, it's a great idea. But how many people realistically know they're going to keep that loan for 15, 20, 30 years?
Nowadays.
Very few. Very few. Because remember, even if you keep the property, you might refinance it, you lose the benefit of the discount points. Because when you refinance, what are you doing with that loan?
Restarting.
You're repaying it, taking out a new loan. You lose the benefit of the discount points. If you cancel your membership at Lifetime Fitness and you go to LA Gym, does the fee you paid to LA Fitness transfer over to LA Gym?
Nope.
No, it's two different companies. They'd be like, so sorry. And that's exactly what's going to happen. When you paid Bank of America discount points and you refinance to Wells Fargo 5 years later, Wells Fargo's going to be like, you didn't pay us no discount points.
Yep.
So the only way borrowers get the benefit of this is to stay in the loan for a very long period of time. Okay. Now, discount points can be used on any loan. They can be used on adjustable rate loans. They can be used on fixed rate loans. They can be used anytime the borrower wants to do what? And this is a borrower choice. The borrower wants to do what?
Lower their rate.
Lower their interest rate, which really, what's their goal? Lower what?
Lower their payment.
Monthly payment. That's the ultimate goal, to lower their monthly payment. Absolutely. Because it takes a long time to recoup this. As I said, they're non-refundable. They're paid up front in cash. Okay. They lower the interest rate on the note, but they actually raise what the lenders call their yield. Their yield is like how much money they made off the loan. Do you think overall this is a good thing for lenders or bad thing when borrowers purchase discount points?
Good for lenders.
It's good for the lenders, right? Because most people who buy them never stay in the loan long enough to actually realize the value of them. And so here's what they say about it. We've increased our yield. It's like a crop. They look at it like a crop. If they can convince you to buy discount points, they increase their yield. They made more money off of you.
Good money.
Right? That's the way they view it.
It might sound a little cliche, but that is something really important to know because they will say that in a test question, it increases the lender's yield.
Well, right, because here's what happens. And Seth is great to point that out. Here's what happens. In your mind, discount points lower. Because that's from the borrower's perspective. They lower the interest rate, they lower the payment. But from the lender's perspective, the yield perspective, they make the loan better. They increase the yield.
For the lender.
Because the lender recognizes that very few people are actually going to see the benefit of that thing.
And they get their interest up front now.
They get the money right now. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. And yield, Natalie, is just the amount of money the lender expects to make off of this person. That's all yield is. Yield is
all
like
the loans that they make are like crops.
right. It's like
yield,
a crop they're planting, and the yield is how much they harvest from that crop. Well, except their crop is money. How much money can they harvest off of this borrower? That's what yield means. That's what yield means. Okay. So the real questions with discount points, and then we'll take a break after we talk about this, is how much of a benefit am I going to get? And how much do I have to pay for that? Because ultimately, that's going to be what borrowers are trying to weigh out. Now, we already mentioned it's going to take about how many years for them to break even? 8 years. It's a long time. It's a long time. Here's the math you're going to be expected to do on the test. On the test, they're going to expect you to be able to calculate or come up with the fee that a borrower is going to be charged for discount points. There are fees that are charged for discount points. The fee is always going to be a percentage of the loan amount. I'm going to say that again. The fee is always going to be a percentage of the loan amount. I am going to repeat that for people in the back. The fee is always going to be a percentage of the loan amount.
Scared my dogs.
Because the classic screw it up on a test when it comes to discount points or interest or anything else based on the loan is to calculate it based on the sales price of the property or the appraised value of the property. This is a loan fee, folks. It does not matter what somebody's paying for the property when you're charging them a loan fee. It matters what they are borrowing when you're charging them a loan fee. So I'll go all the way back to that previous example. We'll back up back here when we were calculating this. Remember when we figured this out earlier? When we said we were buying a house for $425,000 and we were taking out a $340,000 loan and that left $85,000 in cash to pay? Y'all remember that?
Yes.
If this borrower was paying discount points, would we calculate the discount points based on the 425, or would we calculate the discount points based on the 340,000 that they borrowed?
$340,000.
340. Don't fall in that trap. It will be laid out for you on the test, I promise. When you're calculating loan expenses, always use the loan amount. Everybody okay with that statement now? Okay. Sorry to yell at you, but it really needs to get in there big time. Because here's the thing, you learn how to do all the math and you still get the question wrong because you simply started with the wrong number. You started with 425. Do you think they're going to be evil enough to put numbers that coincide with you using 425 on the test?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That will be one of the answer choices, right? That will absolutely be one of the answer choices. So Salma, here's what I said. Whenever you're calculating anything related to the loan, discount points, origination fees, interest, always use the loan balance. The loan balance, not any other number, especially not the purchase price. Okay. Always use the loan balance. So I'm going to skip back up to the slide we were on. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, Every discount point, and you can buy as many as you want. If you want to buy 2 sandwiches, you buy 2 sandwiches. You want to buy 3 sandwiches, you buy 3 sandwiches. Nobody gonna stop you. Can you buy 6 discount points if you want to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. It's not a take it or leave it thing. You can buy as many as you want. Each one of them is going to have a benefit. We'll talk about what the benefit is in just a second. Obviously, what do you think the benefit is without putting a number on it? The more discount points you buy, the more your interest rate is going to what?
Go down.
Go down.
The more your interest rate is going to go down, okay? We are not talking about how much the interest rate is going to go down here. I do not want you to think that the interest rate is going to go down by 1%. It will not. Ever. Nobody got pockets that deep. Nobody. Nobody has pockets that deep to pay their rate down a full percent. No. This is what you pay the bank for a discount point. You pay the bank for a discount point 1% of the amount you're borrowing from that bank. So if you're borrowing $200,000 that day from that bank, how much are you paying them in a fee?
$2,000.
$2,000. Now I want y'all to think of the dynamics of how that's going to work. I want you to think of the dynamics of how that's going to work. In fact, I'm going to use 2 volunteers again here. Jessica, you mind if I use you?
Which one?
Melina, sorry. The one that asked. Okay. Spotlight Jessica. And let me go back, and I got to pick on somebody else. Calvin, you mind if I use you?
Sure.
Okay. So, Calvin is our lender here. Jessica is our borrower. And Jessica has decided that she wants to buy a discount point. She wants to buy her rate down purchasing 1 discount point. Everybody okay with that statement so far?
Yes.
Okay. Calvin is loaning Jessica $400,000. So he's going to get out $400,000 in cash and loan it to Jessica. There's the loan. The loan's been made. Are we all good so far?
Yeah.
Now, what does Jessica immediately, I mean like the instant Calvin hands her the $400,000, what does she have to pay for?
The discount.
The discount point. She doesn't get to wait till the next payment. She doesn't get to wait till down the road. Literally, the instant he hands her $400,000, she has to pay for the discount point. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how much is that discount point going to cost her?
1%.
4,000.
4,000.
1% of the amount she just borrowed. So if you're doing the math, that's $4,000. $400,000 times 1%. Now, practically speaking, Calvin does not care where her $4,000 comes from. Where is Jessica most likely to get the $4,000 from? And this is the ugliness of lending, folks. Where's she most likely to get the $4,000 from?
Borrow at the bank.
Loan.
Didn't Calvin just hand her $400,000?
Calvin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he just hand her $400,000?
Yeah.
She got $400,000 in cash laying in front of her on the table. Where's the most likely place she's going to get $4,000 from?
From there.
From that loan.
Out of that pile of money she just got, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So she's going to take $4,000 of the money that Calvin just gave her and hand it right back to him. That sounds like a big old waste of time, does it not?
Yes.
Let me tell you why it ain't a waste of time from Calvin's perspective. Calvin is going to laugh his ass off for the rest of eternity about that transaction that just happened. How much does Jessica owe Calvin now?
$404,000.
4,004.
She still owes him $400,000.
Plus the 4,000.
But how much money? No, not plus anything.
Right.
She owes him $400,000. That's what she borrowed.
Oh, because it came out the same. Okay.
She owes him $400,000. Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
She's going to repay $400,000, not $396. She owes him $4. Everybody, because she's not made a payment on that loan. Everybody good with me on that?
Yeah, 400,000 got loaned regardless.
Right.
But how much did it cost Calvin? Did he actually have to give her $400,000, or did he only have to give her $396 and get her to sign a note saying she owes $400?
Yes,
Yes,
396 with the
absolutely.
note for 400.
Now
Yeah.
tell me that ain't slick as shit right there.
It is. Definitely.
Welcome to discount points, folks, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Calvin's not going to actually bring $400,000 at closing. He's going to bring what?
396.
96, but he's going to get Jessica to sign a document, a promissory note saying she borrowed how much?
400,000.
100. Also, she can get that monthly payment a little bit lower. Now, do you see why we say that increases the lender's yield on that loan substantially?
Yes.
Is that starting to click in place for everybody now?
Yes.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
So I think it's helpful when you see like people like that sometimes.
John, oh yeah, the monthly payment would be lower from a discount point perspective. Yes.
We're gonna talk about that. John is exactly right, but the monthly payment will be lower. So now it's only fair that we start to compare those two. But before we do, I want to make sure you're good with the math example. Look at this one. How much would be charged for discount points at closing to a borrower who's purchasing a $150,000 home with a 90% loan to value loan and purchasing 2 discount points? So let's walk our way through this. Erica, the lender's yield is based on a combination of lender's upfront money and the money they expect to collect. Basically, when you buy discount points, they expect to collect more money off of you than if you didn't buy discount points. Okay? So when you look at this question, they want to know how much it's going to cost to purchase 2 discount points. 2 discount points is going to cost 2% of the loan amount. Everybody okay with that connection? Because 1 discount point, yes, Rebecca, 1 discount point is always going to cost 1% of the loan. So 2 discount points is always going to cost what?
2%.
2% of the loan. So far, so good? So the real question is here, do we do 2% of $150,000?
Nope.
No.
No, because $150,000 is the purchase price. What do we need to first calculate to get to that discount point cost?
Loan amount.
And that's what step 1 is over here on the left. That is calculating the loan amount. So we're actually borrowing $135,000. 2 discount points is going to be 2% of that amount. That is $2,700 that the borrower is going to pay in discount points up front. So how do you feel about that?
Okay. Travis, I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
So just to go right back around to what you said, so out of that 1,035, that 2,700 is going to be taken out, right?
Out of the 135,000, yes.
Okay. That's
Yes.
it. Thank you.
And from the lender's perspective, but from the borrower's perspective, they're still going to owe $135,000. So they're going to pay their loan back based on $135,000. It's the way it works.
I have a question, Travis.
Okay.
And it's not something like, is it a possibility that someone could just pay the 2,700 in cash, or this is the only option?
No, sure they can. Of course they can. But Jessica, what's the difference?
You're still paying.
Are you still paying?
Okay.
Either way, you're still paying. It doesn't matter. If it makes you feel better to do it the other way, then by all means, feel good. But at the end of the day, the lender still ends up walking out of there with a note for more than what they handed you.
Okay.
That is the nature of discount points. In exchange for what?
For a lower monthly
A lower monthly payment because of a lower rate. How many of you all would like to learn now how much that payment is going to go down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So when you buy discount points, you have to think about fractions. I'm so sorry, but you do. And the easiest way for me to think about fractions is food. Because I like all the food. I don't like it when you cut my food in half. I certainly don't like it when you cut my food in quarters. And if you cut my food in eighths, I'm probably going to stab you. Okay. But there is one very popular food that is often cut into eighths. Pizzas. What do we normally do when we get a pizza? How many slices? What's the most common number of slices in a pizza? 8, right? And the reason it's the most common number is because you do it in half and you turn and you do it in half again. And you just keep going until half. And now you got 8 slices. 8 even slices. Folks, that is the same thing as a fraction of 1/8. If you eat one slice out of that pizza that's been cut into 8 slices, you have eaten 1/8 of the pizza. That is the discount rate benefit. The benefit of the discount point is that you just lowered your interest rate as the borrower by not 1%, but what?
1/8.
1/8 of 1%. In other words, you paid for the whole pizza. Because you paid what for that discount point?
1%.
1% of the loan amount. You only get to eat how many slices at a time of that pizza if you're the borrower?
1/8.
1/8.
One slice, which means you're eating it 8 times slower than you're paying for it, folks.
Wow.
How many years did I say it takes you to catch up to where you break even?
About 8 years.
8 years. I wonder why it's 8 years. That's why it's 8 years right there. The benefit comes back to the borrower 8 times slower than what they have to pay for it. So if you want to see that in real numbers, how it would actually, I'm going to back up to this one over here. Everybody agree that we paid $2,700 in discount point fees for this one right here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we think of that pie, that pizza, and they bought, and we've divided into 8 slices, right? How many slices did they buy here?
2.
8.
2.
Oh,
They're only buying 2 slices, correct?
Yes.
Everybody agree with that?
yes.
Yes.
Now, if they had bought 8 slices, they would have lowered their interest rate by what?
1/8.
1%.
1%.
1%. If they bought all 8 slices, they didn't buy 8 slices. Did they buy half of a pizza?
No.
No.
No. If they had bought half of a pizza, they would have lowered their rate by 0.5%. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Did they buy a quarter of a pizza?
Yes.
No.
Yes, they did.
Looks like
It
a
is
quarter.
a quarter.
1,
Yeah.
2,
Yes.
2. It's a
4.
quarter.
Isn't that a quarter?
Yes.
1 quarter.
Yes.
Some of you need to go to the 3rd grade math class your kids are in today. By the way, whenever I hear somebody say, I don't like this new math they doing in school, this Common Core bullshit, they don't teach it the way I was taught. And then I deal with you people on a daily basis. The one thing they should never do is teach it the way it was taught when we were in school. Because clearly it did not work. So whether Common Core is the answer or not, at least it's something better than what didn't work on all of y'all. That's my philosophy. There it is right there. Because you as adults come to me with 0 in the way of math knowledge, and it is shocking. Now, I hope you through it, but please do not give these teachers hell about teaching a different math method. They need to change something. Because clearly as Americans, we about as math dumb as they come. We are. As a society, terrible. Terrible. I mean, that doesn't, I'm not criticizing you personally. I'm just saying, don't criticize teachers. Don't. No. They got a world to figure out how to do it better. It's tough. It's tough. Right? So now, if we buy 2 discount points, how much is that interest rate going to actually go down? Is it going to go down a full percent?
No.
No.
Just a
No.
quarter.
Is it even going to go down 0.5%?
No.
No. It's going to go down 0.25% because we're buying 2 eighths, 2 slices, right?
Correct.
0.25%. You want to know what that's going to equate to on that loan payment right there? You don't have to see this math, but I'm just going to tell you. They will save $28.13 a month, folks. $28.13 a month for the nice cost of $2,700 up front. Doesn't that sound like a good deal?
No, it does not.
There you go. Those are discount points. Those are discount points. So 2 test questions I would imagine you see about discount points. What is the change on the rate? If they're asking about the change on the rate, how much does a discount point change the rate?
1/8 of 1%.
1/8.
1/8 of 1%, right? 1/8 of 1%. How much does 1 discount point cost?
1%.
1% of the
1%.
value.
1% of the loan amount. 1% of the loan amount. Those are two questions you will get, right? Erica
If you
said,
ever
why
say
would anybody
1%.
do this? No agent. Believe it or not, Erica, there are people out there who know they're going to keep the loan for 20 or 30 years. And if they are, this is very beneficial.
Right.
This is very beneficial for somebody who's going to keep the loan for a very long period of time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Say the first test question, the 1/8.
How much does a discount point change the rate?
Okay.
How much is the rate impacted by purchasing a discount point? And that is, it is lowered by 1/8%. And the 0.125 is just 1/8. If you type 1 divided by 8 in a calculator, you get 0.125. That's the change in the interest rate. It will go down by 0.125%.
Right. And please get in the habit of saying of the loan amount, because as Travis said, you will have to calculate the loan amount.
Right. Now, the cost of the discount point is 1% of the loan amount. So you're paying 1%. You're getting what benefit?
1/8.
1/8%. You're paying what?
1% of the loan.
1% of the loan amount, but you're getting a benefit that's only what?
1/8.
1/8%. See, that's how you got to do it. You got to say it over and over to yourself until you're comfortable with that statement. You're paying what per discount point?
1%.
1% of the loan amount, but you're only getting a benefit of what?
1/8.
1/8%. So it comes back much slower than it goes out as far as the expenses go. Now, that's not the only fee that a lender will charge up front. If we go back to our example from earlier, when we were looking at Calvin and we were looking at him making that loan, that's not the only fee he's going to charge up front on that loan. Discount points is just one example of a lender fee. Another one that is very common that lenders charge on the day of closing is something called an origination fee. The best way I know how to describe to think of an origination fee is a paperwork fee. Origination fees are paperwork fees. The lender is charging a fee to the borrower simply for doing the paperwork of loaning them money.
Mm-hmm.
They are basically, because if you think about it, it is somewhat justified. If you think about it, doesn't the lender have to pay salaries for all those people who are processing that paperwork to get that loan across the finish line?
Yeah.
Right? Don't they have to pay attorneys to draw up the promissory note and to draw up the mortgage and get all that stuff ready to go for closing?
Yes.
So there's a fair amount of expense to the lender to get everything in place to make the loan. They're going to expect the borrower to pay for that rolled into something called an origination fee. Just like discount points are based on the loan amount, origination fees are also based on the loan amount. The difference is they don't have a standardized cost. Origination fees will just be given to you in the question. A 1% origination fee. Well, if it says it's a 1% origination fee, it's 1% of what?
The loan amount.
Of the loan amount. If it says it's a 2% origination fee, it's 2% of what? Of the loan amount. So you just do what you don't have to memorize like a standardized fee for origination fees. You just have to go with what they tell you. So look at this question. What would be the origination fee charged to a borrower who's purchasing a $515,000 home with an 85% loan to value ratio if the lender is charging a 1.5% origination? First of all, is the lender charging 1.5% of the $515,000 purchase price?
No.
No.
Good job.
They're charging 1.5% of the loan amount. So what are we going to have to do first?
Figure out the loan.
The loan amount. And that's where the 515,000 times 85%, because remember, a loan to value ratio is just the percentage of the property's sales price that the lender will lend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us a loan amount of $437,750. If we multiply that times our 1.5% origination fee, that's an origination fee, folks, of $6,566.25, which is again paid when?
Upfront.
Upfront.
Up front. to the lender on the day of closing. See, this is where it's really good to be the lender when it comes to mortgage notes.
Sorry.
Because in any other form of borrowing, we would look at people like they were crazy. If you ask your friend to borrow $100, even if you promise to pay them back with interest, if they handed you the $100 and then said, oh, give me $10 back as a fee right now, you would look at them and say, well, I only owe you $90 then, wouldn't you?
Nope. Yeah, you would, but
That's what you would, but that ain't the way this works.
Right.
That's not the way these fees work. You got to pay money to borrow money from these people because these fees are paid up front. They're non-refundable. Okay. Somebody sent me a message that said they still don't understand the 1/8. You're going to have to watch the video. I can't agonize over that. It's not, if you're not getting it, you may have to go back and do some remedial basic, this is what a fraction is type stuff.
Well, and I was
say
actually
with
just
all
thinking
care.
that. I was actually just thinking that, like, if you're having trouble, this is something that everybody should go back and watch again.
Yeah.
Just saying, because there are a lot of fees being charged here, and you need to understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if specifically the 1/8 part of that is, there are YouTube videos about understanding fractions. And I don't care if they're geared toward a younger audience. You should watch it if you don't understand the 1/8. I mean, because I can't take you, I could, but we can't do it in class. We can't go through remedial math. We just can't.
And they teaching this like, this is so detailed. Again, I know I keep going back to my other classes I've been in, but I've been very scared of math until like today. The way Trav and Seth's, the way you're explaining it, you're making it real life and understandable. Where other classes, they're just like, do this, do that, and I'm like scared, and I feel so comfortable now, and I'm excited. Sorry.
Good. And it really is. You said an important word. It is about comfort. The more you engage with it, the more if you go back and watch the video, trust me, it'll make more sense the second time through. That's why we want you to watch the videos ahead of time if you can, because when you come back here, you're hearing it for the second time. There's a huge benefit in that, folks. It really is. And we do want you to get it. And I don't mind answering those questions outside of class, but I can't make, the whole class go back through something, to target something that really is a math deficiency. It's not a real estate deficiency. It's a math deficiency that we need to get worked out. That is probably a good point for us to take a break. Hopefully everybody had a good break. It is now time for us to take a look at some specific loan programs. And as I mentioned earlier, but it bears mentioning again, remember that there's really no such thing as a better loan overall, or a worse loan overall. There are better or worse loans given certain circumstances.
With my eye. I just want to make sure there's nothing wrong.
You got
like
that?
I said,
There we go. I don't know what's going on with your eye either, Anyeli. But I hope.
I'm sorry. I thought she was asking a question.
I hope you get it straightened out. The joys of Zoom. When you look at loan types, I think it's a lot like anything with financing. It's always situational. I think we tend to tell ourselves, oh, discount points are evil. But the truth is, there are some borrowers who would benefit from discount points. I was just talking to a neighbor of mine the other day, and he brought up, we were walking the dogs and he was walking his kids. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Like I'm walking the dogs and he's walking his kids, but it's kind of the same thing. And they were all on leashes, kids and dogs. Yeah. So it's very similar.
Little sus.
Exactly. But we were passing each other and we started a conversation, and they've been here in the neighborhood not quite as long as we have, but almost. They bought like 2 years after we did. So they've been here for 10 or 11 years now. And the other day he was asking me about interest rates right now. And I said, no, they're not great right now, especially if you refinanced at any time within the last few years. He said, well, no, we never refinanced. I said, never? You've never? That's unusual in today's environment. He said, yeah, no, we've got the same loan we had when we bought the house. Now, he's been here like 11 years. Is that somebody who would have benefited from discount points right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's your borrower that would have benefited from. The problem is, who knows that they're going to be that borrower? It's always like hindsight is 2020, right? You know, like, yeah, now if he looks back, it would have been smart if he had bought the discount points. But it's hard to convince somebody when they're taking out a loan that they're going to have that loan for 8 years. So I don't think you should ever say anything about a loan is bad or anything about a loan is good, because it's all situational. And that's going to be very true with these different types of loans. The most traditional sort of loan is called a conventional loan. Just think of the word. Like, as a general sort of vocabulary English word, what does the word conventional mean? Things are conventional, they're just kind of what?
Standard.
Normal?
Standard, normal, average, you know, they're the norm, right? Nothing exciting about them. And that's exactly what a conventional loan is. A conventional loan is, see, I have questions now. Somebody just sent me a private message, and the private message says potty here. So I don't know if that means they're stepping away to go to the bathroom, or if like they had a potty that was delivered to their house and they need to go check on it,
or
if it means they took a potty where they're sitting and so they need like some time to deal with that. There's lots of questions.
Selma, why are you crying?
I'm kidding. Because she pottied right there. No, it's not Selma. But when you look at the conventional loan type, conventional loans are sort of the standard. They are the most common loans. They are the oldest loan types. They are the most traditional. They are the ones that have the least strings attached to them. And there is one very big string that is going to be the definitional thing of a conventional loan. And this will absolutely be asked on a test. There is no doubt the information you see on this slide right here will be asked on a test. A conventional loan, folks, is a loan that has no ties to the United States federal government. The loan is not backed by the federal government. The loan is not issued by the federal government. The loan is not underwritten by the federal government. The loan has no ties whatsoever to the United States federal government. It is a loan strictly private. It is only between the bank and the borrower. That is the definitional thing of conventional loans. Now, there are some characteristics of conventional loans that we're going to get into, but I don't want you to lose sight of the definition. If they ask a test question that's just a straightforward, what makes a loan conventional? What's your answer going to be?
Not backed by the government.
federal government.
It's not tied to.
It's not backed up or tied to the federal government in any way. That's a conventional loan. So if you go to State Employees Credit Union and you take out a loan from State Employees Credit Union, and nothing about that loan process is related back to the federal government, you have what kind of a loan?
Conventional.
Conventional loan. Absolutely. Okay. That you have a conventional loan. So when you look at that, what does it mean when we say a loan is backed up or guaranteed? If a conventional loan is defined as one that is not backed by the government, what the heck does that mean? Some loans, not all, because clearly conventional loans don't fall in this category, have guarantees from the federal government that if the borrower defaults, the government will step in and in some ways make the lender whole. Now, the government will not step in and make anybody's payments. Let's get that out of your brain right away. Because that would actually be a bigger benefit to who? Who would that benefit most if the government stepped in and made payments for people? It would benefit the borrower. Government backing on a loan does not benefit the borrower. It benefits the lender. Basically, backing on a loan means if the loan defaults and you've gone through the foreclosure process and there still isn't enough money, there's a deficiency, then come talk to us and we'll make you whole. Would that be good for a lender to have that kind of backing from the federal government? That if the borrower doesn't pay you and you go through foreclosure and you sell their property and you don't get all your money back, come talk to us and we'll make you whole. Would that be a nice feeling for a lender to have?
Yes, it's important to realize that these loans are just loans. It's not a government-made loan. It's a
Right.
government-insured loan.
The question is whether the government backs up the loan. Will conventional loans have that security from the federal government?
No.
No, they will not. A conventional loan is a loan that will not have that security from the federal government. Now, notice I did not say that a conventional loan won't have any security. I just said it won't have security that comes from where? It won't have a guarantee that comes from where?
Federal government.
Federal government. Good. So when we talk about a backed note, loans can either be uninsured, which means they have no backing whatsoever, or, well, they're all backed by something. Let's back up for a second. What is every one of these notes backed up by? Don't they all have collateral?
Yes.
So what are they all backed up by?
Trust.
The property.
Property.
The property, right? First, you got a promise to pay. That's the promissory note. Then you got collateral in the property. That's like the backup plan, right?
Yes.
What's the backup to the backup plan?
Insurance.
Insurance. That's exactly right. So when we talk about a loan being guaranteed or backed, what we're saying is this is a backup for the backup, right? This is in not only in case the borrower defaults, but you go straight to the backup from there, and the backup is foreclose on the property. So if before we even talk about mortgage insurance paying off, what two things have already happened before we even have a discussion about mortgage insurance paying off or mattering? The borrower went in default, step one, and what?
And it's gone into foreclosure.
It's gone into foreclosure, or it's already been foreclosed?
It's already been foreclosed.
It's already been foreclosed. And what is true of that foreclosure sale? See, I have to get you there because you hear me say it and you don't learn it. You got to learn it for yourself. There's a deficiency. There you go. So I want you to go through it again. Before mortgage insurance matters at all, what things have already gone wrong? Pretty much everything's gone wrong for mortgage insurance to matter. Step one, what went wrong first?
Default.
Borrower stopped paying. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Does mortgage insurance pay just because a borrower defaults?
No.
No. Step two, what happened? Foreclosure. It was sold at a foreclosure auction. Step three, now, does mortgage insurance pay just because it was sold at a foreclosure auction?
No.
No. In fact, a lot of insured notes, the mortgage insurance never pays anything because the foreclosure auction brings enough money to satisfy the debt. Everybody with me so far?
Yes, it only protects the lender in case of a loss.
And then there you go. So step three, what has also gone wrong in this thing for the lender to make a file or claim against their mortgage insurance?
There's a deficiency.
There's a deficiency.
Not enough money.
There's not enough money to pay off the debt. Are we all together now on when mortgage insurance would actually be beneficial? Okay. So a conventional uninsured loan is simply one that doesn't have the backup to the backup. There is no guarantee. If the lender who has a conventional uninsured loan goes to a foreclosure and the property doesn't sell for enough money, the lender just had a loss. Does that make sense for everybody? They had a deficiency. And there's nothing to pay that deficiency because the loan was what? What word do we have up there?
Uninsured.
It was uninsured. Does that make sense for everybody? Now, they may still go after the borrower for a deficiency judgment. They may do all those things. But as far as like something to actually pay to back this up, it doesn't exist. Sorry. I don't know. He's dreaming. I didn't know what he was doing. I just heard panting noises from behind me. He is going to town dreaming back there. I don't know if he's dreaming about being chased through the woods or what, but he's going to town down there. I don't know if y'all hear that. You hear these whimpers coming from down there?
Yeah.
So because the lender is taking more of a risk here and agreeing to let the loan be uninsured, what borrowers do you think are going to qualify for uninsured conventional loans?
Best
ones with high down payment.
This is your cream of the crop borrower. Because the only borrowers that the lender is going to feel comfortable doing this with are the ones that they're not worried about going into default. right? If you were really worried about somebody going into default as a lender, you would insist that they have mortgage insurance. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Right? Because it would protect you in the event of the mortgage insurance. Here's why it's good for the borrower that mortgage insurance not be there. Because the borrower has to pay for the mortgage insurance. The borrower has to, even though it doesn't benefit the borrower, who does the mortgage insurance ultimately benefit if it ever pays?
The
The lender.
It benefits the lender. But the lender who requires mortgage insurance is requiring the borrower to pay for that mortgage insurance. And so most borrowers do not want to pay for that mortgage insurance. Everybody good with that
who
statement?
would? It's not protecting them.
Who wants to pay for insurance that doesn't protect me? I don't even want to pay for the insurance that protects me most of the time. I certainly don't want to pay for somebody else's insurance. And that's what's happening when, as Myra said, when PMI comes into play. PMI, folks, is the acronym for private mortgage insurance. So a conventional loan that's uninsured is one that doesn't have insurance from the government, but it also doesn't have what other kind of private insurance?
Private mortgage insurance?
PMI, private mortgage insurance. So a conventional uninsured loan has no mortgage insurance at all. Not private mortgage insurance and not government mortgage insurance. Are we all good with that statement?
Mm-hmm.
And because it is left sort of naked and uninsured like that, they generally will only qualify you for this type of a loan if you have really good credentials, high down payment, low debt to income ratios. Why is this a desirable loan for a lot of borrowers? What do y'all think?
Interest rates are small.
They're paying less.
Because they don't have to pay for the mortgage insurance.
There it is, Shinar. Say it again, Shinar.
Because they don't have to pay extra for mortgage insurance.
That's the only difference, folks. The interest rates are probably not going to be any lower. The terms are probably not going to be any better, but there's one big thing that borrower's not having to pay for with this loan. In fact, this is the only type of loan that the borrower's not having to pay for this thing. What's the one thing the borrower's not having to pay for here? Mortgage insurance. There is no mortgage insurance payment here. And that, folks, is a big deal.
Yes.
You know, to give you an idea, I'm just going to give you a number. What do y'all think an average mortgage note is in Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, right now? If somebody was going out to buy a house, what would they have to borrow probably?
500, 550?
500?
400,
400?
yeah, 4.
Okay, well, we'll say 500. $500,000. I'm not talking about the interest rate. I'm not talking about the PI payment. I'm talking about just the mortgage insurance. Y'all ready for this? Just the mortgage insurance would be about $208 a month.
Something I could shop with.
Just the mortgage insurance. Now keep in mind, does that benefit the borrower at all?
Not at all.
No, but they have to pay for it. So who wouldn't want to get this loan knowing that they can save a couple $100 a month in mortgage insurance? Now do you see why this is the most desirable of all loans?
Yes.
For most borrowers.
This is Apple and the other ones are all Androids.
See, I just
How dare you?
That's just a no. That's a no for me.
It was really a dig at Travis.
I know,
But
it's a dig at me. I'm one of those people. I just don't own any of their products. I never will. That's a no.
I'm with you, Travis.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I put Steve Jobs and Elon Musk in the same bucket together. They are utterly brilliant people who have remade the face of the planet. And I honestly believe that the biggest shitbags that ever lived. And I cannot endorse anything either one of them have ever done.
I didn't say anything about the people.
I mean, Steve Jobs literally told the world that his daughter was not his daughter and had his daughter eating out of a dumpster when he was worth $440 million.
Mm-hmm.
I can't buy that product.
And people call me Shannon Jobs all the time.
I can't do it. I just can't. And I don't even care that he's dead anymore. He's dead, good. I still ain't buying their products. You know, I can't. No, you know. And so I'm an Aquarius. Yes, I'm an Aquarius. Yeah, Katrina, he has a very, very, he's not a nice person at all. He mellowed. Cancer will do that to you, but he was not a nice person at all. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. There's no doubt about it. But you know, I'm not an Android. I'm not an Apple person. That's for sure. So, when you look at the conventional loans, the uninsured is desirable because of not paying for the mortgage insurance. Shane, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Just making sure. So are all conventional loans don't have to have insurance, or is this only if you have the best credit? It's up to the lender.
It's up to the lender. Some conventional loans are going to be insured. I'm glad you asked that. That's why we say an uninsured conventional loan. There's also such thing as an insured conventional loan. The uninsured version is the one that has no mortgage insurance at all, either government or private mortgage insurance. Okay, that help? Good? Okay.
Thank you.
Good, you're welcome. So the uninsured one is most desirable simply because of not paying for the mortgage insurance. What people normally qualify for that are the ones that the lender is least worried about. People that have the lowest loan to value ratios, people that make the higher down payments. The lender is just simply put more comfortable with those folks. They have more skin in the game, and because of that, lenders are usually willing to say there's such a low chance of this loan failing and us losing money, there's no need to make this person buy mortgage insurance. I mean, I want to think of it this way. If somebody makes a 30% down payment, is there any reasonable chance that the lender's going to lose money on that thing? What do y'all think? Somebody puts 30% down. Is there any reasonable chance the lender's going to lose money?
No.
No, because even if
loaning 70% of that property's
value, right? And so even if the borrower never makes a payment, the lender's going to foreclose, and they're going to easily sell it to get their what?
Money.
Their money.
Money back.
No loss. No loss. So mortgage insurance would be useless there. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
And so the uninsured loan goes to those people who basically have no risk of default. That doesn't mean everybody will have no risk of default. And here's how lenders, right or wrong, this is the cutoff line for lenders where they think you are a risk of us losing money on your default versus you're not a risk of us losing money on your default. Lenders have a line in the sand, and it's a loan to value line in the sand. And you need to know it. 80% loan to value. That's the maximum tolerance for a lender. Now, when I say maximum, they don't care if you go lower than that number. When do they care?
You go over the number.
When you go over that number.
And I just want to reiterate, because I think whenever we see this 20% down payment, 80% loan to value, we get locked in the idea that that's the only type of uninsured conventional loan there is. There's literally thousands of options. You could have I don't know, Travis, like a 50% down payment, 50% loan to value.
Absolutely, 50-50. If somebody makes a 50% down payment, is the lender going to look at them and say, you're a risk of us losing money on you? Or are they just going to give them an uninsured loan?
Uninsured loan.
They're going to give them an uninsured loan. Mm-hmm. If somebody puts 30% down, is the lender going to say, you're a risk of us losing money on you? Or are they just going to give you an uninsured loan? An uninsured loan. But when that borrower comes to them and says, you know what, I only want to put 10% down.
You're insured.
You need to be insured.
Right.
It's not we won't give you a loan. It is we'll give you a loan as long as you get what?
Insurance.
Because now we're scared we lose our money. That's it. That's exactly right. We're scared with you. We're terrified with you.
So we're scared to give you money.
That's right. You're asking the bank to take more of a risk in giving you the loan, so they expect you to buy insurance that benefits them. So insured loans are going to be ones where the borrower makes less than what down payment?
20%.
20%. Less than 20%.
So their loan to value is more. Their loan to value is more than what number?
80%. This is important. I remember I probably went through the class 5 times, And I swear, I was actually working with a buyer and it hit home for me because I was like, how are they only putting 5% down and getting a conventional loan?
And I want to be clear, when he says he went through the class 5 times, he does not mean as a student. He means as a mom.
No, like just sitting through it, listening to it. And I was still under the impression, I was like, wait, how are they only putting 5% down and getting a conventional loan? It's insured.
It's conventional insured. Can you still get a conventional loan if you only make a 5% down payment, folks?
Yeah.
Apparently.
Sure.
Yeah.
As long as you buy what to protect the lender? Insurance, because you're risky. You are risky to them. You need that private mortgage insurance. The other thing to understand about the insurance, and I say this on several slides because it's important. Mortgage insurance, because it's only on people who are very risky, because mortgage insurance is only on the riskiest of people, it does not insure the entire loan. There is a point at which every borrower is no longer considered risky. Even people that borrow more than 80% loan to value, at some point are they going to cease to be a big risk to the lender?
Yes.
Because what are they doing with that balance all the time?
Paying it down.
Paying it down. At some point, are they going to get below 80% loan to value?
Yes.
And when they do, the risk goes away. And so therefore, what also can go away?
The insurance.
Can. Here's the thing. And this is the idea you need to tie that with. If the insurance can go away because the risk is gone, then the insurance wasn't really covering the whole loan anyway.
On that note, Travis?
Yep.
I just want to ask that. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was only covering the risky part of the loan. Does that make sense for everybody?
So I want everybody to close your eyes and listen to this one more time. Hear it and let it hit home. The mortgage insurance is designed to partially protect the lender in the event of a default by the borrower.
Partially. You know why he's hammering on that? Because there's going to be an answer choice somewhere on the test that says mortgage insurance fully protects the lender in the event of a default.
No.
Is that true?
No.
No. It only partially protects the lender in the event of a default, because at its very basic core, a big portion of that loan has no risk associated with it as far as the lenders are concerned.
Right.
It's only when it goes above 80% loan to value that conventional lender is going to say, you know what, we need you to buy some private mortgage insurance to protect us. But the good news is this. When you get below 80% loan to value, right? When you get below 80% loan to value, what is the lender going to allow the borrower to do?
Get rid of
insurance. Drop the insurance. It's sort of like, think of it this way. Imagine if your health insurance company charged you an extra premium because you smoke. Why do they charge you an extra premium because you smoke?
Your risk.
You're higher risk. But if you go back to them and you say, you know what, I haven't smoked in 2 years, guess what they do? Guess what they might do? They might drop that additional premium off because you're no longer the what?
A risk.
You're no longer the risk. And the same thing is going to be true with these notes. So here's what I want you to think of. Here's what I want you to understand. This is all actually the same loan. This is just the same loan that's being paid down over time. It started as the loan on the right. Over time, what's happening to the loan balance?
Going down.
It's decreasing.
It's decreasing, which means the equity is increasing, right? So when you look at the one on the far right, when they took out the loan and they were at 95% loan to value, is this an insured conventional loan or an uninsured conventional loan at that point in time?
Insured.
It's an insured conventional loan because the risk is simply too high. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
And so that lender is saying, yes, we will give you a loan, but only if you insure some of our risk. Anybody want to guess what risk they're insuring? And Seth just pointed it out with that pink box there. If you
Partially default.
That's exactly right. And Natalie said it in the chat.
15%.
Does everybody see the pink box that Seth just drew there on the far right?
Yes.
That's what they want that borrower to take out insurance on. And by the way, as we pay that down to 94% loan to value, are we a little bit less risky?
Yes.
Yes.
92% loan to value, are we a little bit less risky?
Yes.
Right? Coming down, but still got to buy insurance. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Seth, I want you to draw the same pink box on the middle one around the amount of the loan that exceeds 80% loan to value.
Got you.
By the way, he's done. See the pink box on the middle one? Everybody see that pink box on the middle one?
Nope.
See it
Not
right
yet.
There isn't.
No, we don't see it.
So that's just that you.
Because
Yeah,
there's
that's it.
not one.
There isn't.
Because there's no loan amount that exceeds what anymore?
80%.
80%. And if there's no loan amount that exceeds 80%, there's nothing to what?
Insure.
There's nothing to insure anymore. Does that make sense for everybody? Because you were never insuring the whole. Put your pink box back over there on the right hand side, if you will, Seth. Y'all look at that. I want y'all to look at this pink box again. Is that pink box insuring the entire loan?
No.
No, just the amount that exceeded the 80% risk level. Does that make sense for everybody?
Right. The lenders don't feel concerned about this bottom portion down here.
They're not worried about the stuff below the line.
They know they're going to get it back.
They know they're going to get that back because they have to sell the property. The property will take care of that. Everybody okay
When
with
it gets
that?
above 80%.
They get
of the
worried
value.
above that 80% line. And so that's what they want insurance on. And look at Salma's comment/question. So anything less than 80% loan to value is going to be a what kind of loan?
Uninsured.
Uninsured conventional loan. Because the risk has gone away. Does that make sense for everybody?
Right. And that one on the far right is the exact situation that buyer was in that I was working with.
There you go. So they're going to have to pay for that mortgage insurance, that private mortgage insurance, until they bring the value of, the balance of the loan down, or the value of the property goes what? Up. But one way or another, we need them to be at less than 80% loan to value.
Right.
Okay. Cynthia, Christina, sorry. I will point out, we're not talking about home insurance. Point of order. We're not talking about home insurance. Home insurance that you get from Geico is on the physical structure. We are not insuring the structure. We are insuring the loan.
I think she's just saying big tech is listening.
I know. So Tracy says, so the insurance goes away on its own. Correct. That is correct, Tracy. Don't you think your lender has a chart that says when you're going to get below 80% loan to value? What do y'all think? Yeah, they know you're paying the loan down over a certain period of time. Here's the reality, though. Could you get there faster than their chart?
Yes.
And if you get there faster than their chart, you might want to contact them and point that out. Because guess what you can make happen if you can prove to them that you have 80% loan to value before it's scheduled to go away.
Mortgage insurance goes away. Stop paying
You can get rid of it anyway. You can get rid of it anyway as long as you can prove that you have the correct amount of equity. Janet, was that your question?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm still being charged it and we're way over. It's just because it's their calculation of when they thought it would be.
Right.
We're going to reorder an appraisal.
There you go. So that was going to be my next question. How would Janet, once she contacts the lender and she says, I think I have more than 20% equity, I think I'm below 80% loan to value, what is the lender going to use? The same process they used when they made the loan in the first place to figure if she was at 90% loan to value. What are they going to use to try to figure out if she's below 80% right now?
Appraisal.
An appraisal. And they're going to make her pay for that appraisal because she's the one asking for this to go away. Does everybody recognize that?
Yes.
And they'll say to her, you got to pay for this appraisal if you want to do this. And then we'll consider it.
And it's their
somebody.
And we could have done it 2 years ago with the market. I just didn't think about it until I was listening to this course last week. I was like, dang it.
So you've essentially been paying for insurance that you didn't need for a couple years. Yeah.
So somebody asked, what numbers do you subtract to get the amount that is insured?
So to get the amount, so let's first talk about the amount that's not insured. What amount, loan to value wise, is never insured, folks?
The bottom part.
80%.
80%.
80%. So that's what you're subtracting. You're always subtracting 80. What is the number that you're subtracting from? Their current loan to value ratio, right? Which is not necessarily, in this one it's 95. But if somebody has a 90% loan to value ratio, what are you doing?
Only 10%.
90 minus what?
80.
80.
If somebody has an 82% loan to value, what are you doing?
Just 82 minus
82 minus 80.
80.
If somebody has a 96% loan to value, what are you doing?
96.
96 minus 80. Does everybody
It's
see how
always the
you
loan.
figure out what percentage is insured?
The loan amount minus 80.
That's right. The current loan to value ratio minus 80. Because once you get below 80, insurance goes away. Everybody okay with that? Okay. So good. So every loan, every conventional loan could and will eventually become an uninsured conventional loan once you get below this risk level. Everybody all right with that statement? Because it's an important idea. It really is an important idea. Now, when you look at that, now that you know that, remember the loan is not fully insured. Nothing's going to fully insure the loan. There's always going to be some risk to the lender still because some disaster could happen and maybe it sells for only 60% of the property's value. But it's going to go away as far as the insurance goes once you get below 80. Remind me again, what is the definition of a conventional loan?
Not backed by the government. Loan not backed by the government.
Not backed by the government. True or false statement? All conventional loans are not backed.
False.
False.
Yeah, they're just not backed by the government.
There it is. There's the distinction you need to see. Can a conventional loan be a backed or insured loan? Yes. But that insurance will not come from what source? The government. There you go.
Because you'll get a test question that asks what's the best definition.
That's right. What's the best definition of a conventional
and
loan?
You'll find these characteristics there, but the best one is not backed by the government.
Not backed by the government, because that is what makes it conventional. Okay, that's exactly what makes it a conventional loan. The fact that it's not backed by the government. Keep in mind that conventional loans can also be insured. The type or the name of insurance that goes on a conventional loan. No, Chris. The type of insurance that comes on a conventional loan is called private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is the insurance that is purchased for conventional loans because they can't get it from where? Where can conventional lenders not go for their insurance? Government. So they have to go to private insurance companies for insurance on these conventional loans. Everybody good with me on that?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll tell you a little secret, and this is not going to be tested, but I'll just tell you a little secret. Most lenders have no standards anymore. Zero standards. You hear that, you hear all the time, oh, well, you're qualified with, Truist for their pace setter mortgage program, whatever whatever bank, whatever. That's all a lie. That's all a lie. The banks will lend anybody money. Who actually determines whether or not you are qualified for a conventional loan, folks?
The lender.
Not the lender.
Government?
Not the government, for sure.
You do.
Wait, what was the question?
Not the bank, that's the lender. Who actually determines if you're going to get that conventional loan or
Oh,
not?
us, the purchaser. Our
Think about what we've been talking about this
our debt
entire
to-
time.
our debt to
What are we talking about? There it is.
Insurance.
The insurance company is going to determine
Go, girl.
if you get that conventional loan. Because here's the thing. The bank doesn't care about the risk if it is what?
Insured.
Insured. If you can get a mortgage insurance company to give you mortgage insurance, will you get a conventional loan? Yes, absolutely. Because again, folks, why would the bank care? If they have gotten insurance on your loan, it doesn't matter to them. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
So when you find out somebody was denied for a conventional loan, is it probably the lender that denied them, or is it the insurance company who said they're too much of a risk? We're not writing an insurance policy on that person.
Insurance.
It's the insurance. It's the insurance company that looked at it. Janet said, who are these insurance companies? They're the biggest insurance companies in the world, companies like AIG, which is why when the mortgage meltdown happened in the late 2000s, people were like, why are companies like State Farm and AIG and all these insurance companies going bankrupt? Because what's one huge part of their portfolio, folks? What kind of insurance policies? Mortgage insurance policies. And so when those loans started to fail, who was having to pay out on all those conventional loans that failed? Insurance companies were, right? It's one thing if that government-backed loan fails. That's the government. It's another thing entirely when that conventional insured loan fails. That's a private company having to pay out. And companies like AIG got hit with billions of dollars in insurance claims almost overnight for these failing loans. It just about wiped them out. Okay? So that is conventional loans and how the mortgage insurance works on those. And that's a really important topic. Now, before we get into government loans, we need to make one last sort of comparison here because it's really important to remember. There really is only one difference between conventional loans and government-backed loans. And that one difference is the source of the insurance. Where does the insurance come from on the loan? If the insurance comes from a private company, it is what type of a loan? Conventional insured. If there is no insurance, it is what type of a loan? Conventional uninsured. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
If it has insurance that does not come from the government, that is a conventional insured loan. Has PMI, private mortgage insurance. If it is an uninsured loan, that is a conventional uninsured loan, if there's no backing at all. If there is mortgage insurance that is being provided by the United States federal government, we call that a government-backed loan.
I didn't understand that.
I didn't either. You just need to cue that up. I did not understand that. No. Does everybody understand that? Do we understand the difference between a conventional loan and a government-backed loan? It is simply where the insurance on the loan comes from. So if Bank of America wants to make a FHA loan, which is on that list of government-backed loans there, where do they have to go to get mortgage insurance for that borrower if they want to make that loan?
The government.
Government. If Bank of America wants to give that same borrower a conventional loan, where do they have to go to get mortgage insurance for that borrower? The private mortgage insurance companies. Why is it that you all think we need both? Before we get into the specifics of the different government loan programs, why do we need both? Why do we need private mortgage insurance and government mortgage insurance? Why do you think both exist? Why not just let PMI do it all? Why not just have it all be private mortgage insurance?
Is it different qualifications for different people?
Very much so. Very much so. Who do you think is going to be pickier about who they insure? Private companies or the federal government? Private companies. Do you think there are going to be lots of borrowers who the private mortgage insurance companies look at and go, no, we're not issuing an insurance policy on you? Do you think that's going to happen?
Yes.
Does that mean that person cannot get a mortgage loan?
No.
No. It means they can't get a conventional mortgage loan. What might they qualify for, though, still?
Government-backed.
A government-backed loan, because that same borrower might be able to purchase mortgage insurance from where?
The government.
The government. And if that borrower can get mortgage insurance from the government, then the bank is just going to shift gears and say, okay, well, we're not going to give you a conventional loan, then we're going to give you a what?
Government-backed loan.
A government-backed loan. That's the only difference, folks. But there is another difference. Cost.
Yep.
Both of these are mortgage insurance.
I would think government would be cheaper, right?
The costs are not even close. You would think government would be cheaper, but let me point out something. The government mortgage insurance is mostly going to folks who are far greater risk. These are ones that the private insurance companies have said, no way. Not taking on that level of risk. If you are a riskier borrower, is your mortgage insurance likely to be cheaper or more expensive?
More expensive.
Which one of these mortgage insurances is more expensive, folks?
The government.
The government version. The government version. Y'all want to know how expensive? Because it's ugly. Y'all remember that same $500,000 loan we talked about in Charlotte? Right?
Yes.
And I'm going to put the numbers back up there. 500,000. What did I say? It was $208 a month for PMI. Oops, back up here. $208. Same borrower, if they get denied for PMI because for whatever reason, the insurance company feels like they're not making enough of a down payment. The insurance company feels like they're too big of a risk with credit score. The insurance company feels like their debt to income ratios. The insurance company is going to look at everything about because they're the ones insuring this risk. That makes sense for everybody? So let's say the private mortgage insurance company has said, no, they're too much risk. Well, that takes away that conventional option. Here's the difference, folks. That borrower might go get a government-backed loan. That same loan for the same amount of money, $500,000. Here is the cost of the monthly mortgage insurance.
Wow.
Ouch.
A pure mortgage payment.
Is there a difference?
Way big difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is expensive to be a risky borrower. Now, that I am not saying risky in a disparaging manner. In fact, most of us, the first time we purchase a home, guess what we're qualified as? Risky. Anybody want to guess what my first loan was when I purchased my first home?
FHA?
An FHA loan.
Yep.
I paid that ugly number. Now, mine wasn't that high because my purchase price wasn't that high, but because it's all based on, percentage of your loan amount, right? But at the same time, I paid that ugly number because I didn't qualify I couldn't get conventional mortgage insurance. Is everybody starting to understand that now? Right? But the government would sell me mortgage insurance. And since the government would sell me mortgage insurance, then the banks would give me a government-backed loan. That's really what it boils down to. A government-backed loan, and the most common of them is called the FHA loan, is really just a loan where the government has agreed to provide mortgage insurance at a very large cost. This is certainly not some gift from the government. This actually is a very big profit margin for the federal government. They make quite a lot of money in most cases, because if you think about the current environment right now, how many people do you know that have gone into default and been foreclosed and their property sold for less than what they owed in the last few years?
Yeah, this happens to standard.
I mean, how many of you think that's been real common in the last few years? I want you to think about that for a second. In the last few years, not just going into default, because that's what you focus on too much, but they went into default, they got foreclosed on, and their property sold for so little money it would not satisfy the debt of their loan. How many of y'all think that's been common over the last few years?
Yes.
Where? Show me one house in the United States of America that's not worth 30% more right now than it was 4 years ago. Just find one.
It has. I wasn't thinking right.
I know you weren't thinking right. That's why I drug you through it. Because you're focused too much on the default. Here's where you are in your head. Oh, COVID. There's a lot of people didn't make their payments during COVID. It doesn't matter if they don't make their payments, folks. Mortgage insurance only pays if you get all the way to the end of the line and the foreclosure sale didn't yield what?
Enough money.
Enough money. Folks, if you're foreclosing on a house right now, Is there easily enough money to pay off the debt?
Yes.
Yes.
So here's my question for you. How many of these mortgage claims have any of these insurance companies paid over the last 3, 4, 5 years, including the federal government?
Not very few.
Almost none of them. You just don't find them now. Not because borrowers aren't going into default, but because the underlying property values are so high. Does that make sense for everybody now? Okay. That's a big deal to get your brain wrapped around that. The other thing to understand about an FHA loan, the government does not make loans. The government does not make loans. I promise that's going to be an answer choice on the test. Do you get an FHA loan from the FHA?
No.
No, you do not. Where do you get an FHA loan from?
Bank.
Same place you get any loan from, a bank.
Right.
What is FHA providing in that loan? Insurance. FHA is simply the source of the insurance. That's all. They are not the source of the loan itself. Can FHA set the interest rates?
No.
No, because they're not what?
The lender.
They're not the lender. Who's going to set your interest rate if you get an FHA loan?
Lender.
Your lender is. FHA provides one service here and one service only. Insurance. Because they provide the insurance, though, they do have a big impact on who can get an FHA loan. Here's why. The bank will make the loan to anybody who can get what?
Insurance.
Insurance. Do you think FHA, though, even as generous as they are with their criteria, has a point at which they will say, you're too risky even for us? Absolutely. Absolutely they do. And let me tell you the point at which FHA says a borrower is too risky even for them to insure. A borrower who cannot or will not put down at least 3.5% of the purchase price of the property. So in other words, what's the down payment requirement for FHA to give you mortgage insurance? 3.5%, which if you're flipping it around means what is the maximum loan to value ratio that FHA will allow and still insure that loan?
96.5.
96.5% loan to value. That is the maximum loan to value. Now, the banks would be happy to lend 100% loan to value. Why don't they do it then?
Too risky.
Too risky?
But it's too risky for who? Because the banks don't care about the risk. They're getting insurance. So why don't the banks do 100% loan to value?
The insurance.
The insurance won't get approved. FHA won't give that borrower what? Insurance. And so the bank's like, we're not giving you a loan because you can't get what? Insurance on it. You don't need to satisfy us. You need to satisfy the insurance company, aka the government.
Right. And I just want to tie back that thing you talked about, Travis, saying like when the loan to value goes up, your down payment goes down. When your down payment goes up, your loan to value comes down.
Correct.
I find that people tend to like lose that when we're talking about this.
They way overcomplicate it, right? So if we say 3.5% down, that should be instantly, well, 100 minus 3.5, what are we borrowing? 96.5, correct?
Correct.
Because doesn't the LTV plus the down payment have to always add up to 100%?
Yes.
Always, right? So if we're saying that the down payment is 3.5%, the only way that works is if the LTV is what?
96.5.
96.5%. Does everybody see that? Okay. That is as far as FHA will go. I am not saying that there are not loans out there that are 100% loan to value. There are. They're just rare. And they won't be an FHA loan because FHA loans have this absolute line in the sand. Could you, in theory, get a conventional loan at 100% loan to value?
Yes, in theory.
Yes.
Yeah. If who will give insurance?
Private mortgage.
Private mortgage.
Private mortgage insurance companies will insure it, then absolutely you can. Absolutely. But FHA will not do that. FHA stops at 96.5%, which means if you're buying a house with an FHA loan, you're going to have to make at least some small down payment. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
But listen, I will tell you the truth. When you're a new buyer, even 3.5% can be daunting.
Yeah.
Especially in an environment where prices have done what they have done. A $500,000 home, folks, times 3.5%. That's $17,500. Even at 3.5%. Okay? So make sure you understand that relationship there. Other things that FHA requires in order to insure the loan. Again, FHA doesn't make rules for lenders. They don't say to the lender, you have to do this. They just say, if you don't do this, we will not provide what on that loan?
Insurance.
Insurance. So the lenders comply with those rules to satisfy FHA so they can get the insurance on the loan. First thing FHA says is got to be a fixed rate loan. FHA will not provide insurance on an adjustable rate loan. What do you think FHA is trying to protect borrowers against there? What could happen with an adjustable rate loan?
It could go
It
up.
can increase.
Payments increase dramatically. Everybody okay with that? Payments increase dramatically with those adjustable rate loans. FHA also is very different than PMI in one other major way. Look at this. This is yuck, yuck, yuck right here. If you are purchasing mortgage insurance from the federal government, from FHA, even when you have built sufficient equity, even when you have gotten down to less than 80% loan to value, what is going to happen to that monthly mortgage insurance cost?
Dave,
It's going to remain.
It's going to remain. As long as you still have that FHA loan in place, you will always pay for FHA mortgage insurance on it. There's another reason right there. If you qualify for conventional, you better get conventional.
Are there interest rates better to make up for that?
No, they are not. They are not. Okay. So Joseph said, can an FHA loan have both? No. No, because there is no need for both, right? There is no need. In fact, they would probably just fight with each other about who was going to pay if there was a loss. Look at this one down here. I think there's a test question here, but there's also a real world lesson here. Biggest requirement probably of all for FHA loans.
Occupancy.
Owner occupancy. What does that mean? The owner must reside in the property for FHA to provide mortgage insurance. Who does that eliminate from obtaining FHA loans? Investors, landlords, people that are going to rent the property out. If you're not going to live there, an FHA insured loan is not for you. That's called loan fraud. You go to prison for that.
And no exceptions down the road?
Well, most of them do have some period that's stated in the promissory note. After a certain period of time, it can be rented out, but you would need to refer to the promissory note because those can vary. But it will be a couple to several years. It will not be a month or something like that. Yeah, the owner occupancy. And as a matter of fact, no, it is not for at least 60 days. It depends on the lender, but it's going to be at least a couple of years that you have to have owner occupancy. The other thing you have to be really sensitive to with FHA loans is how quickly you have to move into the property. Even not moving in fast enough will cause you to be in violation of your FHA loan note because they'll usually have a time period after closing where you have to be living in the property, which doesn't work for like ones that they're going to do work to and that sort of thing. Okay. You do not need to know. Somebody sent me a question. You need to know the time period requirement. They have to live there for the test. No, because it varies. It's not a standard rule, right? And like as Stephanie pointed out, her note, her aunt's note said it was 5 years. So you'd have to refer to your note. But generally speaking, when somebody first takes out an FHA loan, it has to be what from the very beginning?
Owner occupied.
Owner occupied. Owner occupied for at least some period of time. You have to refer to the note to see exactly how long. The interest rates are not going to be set by FHA. They're going to be set by the lender because it's a loan. The property's got to be appraised by an FHA certified appraiser. Look at this one down here, though. FHA will not provide mortgage insurance if the lender puts what clause in the note?
Prepayment.
A prepayment penalty. If the lender puts a prepayment penalty in the note, FHA says, nope, no insurance. So what do you think the lenders do?
They don't do it.
They don't do it. They don't do it. And this has always been funny to me because FHA will say, we don't make these loans. We don't have the power to force lenders to do this. And I'm like, sure you do. Because as soon as you say we're not going to give insurance, that means the loan's not going to get what?
It's not going to get.
It's not going to get issued. So really, FHA is setting the criteria much more than the lenders are.
And
In a lot of these cases.
Who is that, like a government? I mean, I know it's government, but is it like in DC?
It is. FHA, Federal Housing Administration, is a division of the federal government located in DC. It's part of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. So when you hear like somebody is the Secretary of HUD, FHA is a subsidiary branch of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Shirley?
I want to make sure I understand what you said. So with regard to the FHA loan, so what you're saying is the federal government, the FHA loan will not be approved if in the loan documents it says that
The insurance won't be approved.
Sorry, the insurance won't be approved if in the loan documents it says this loan may be prepaid in full.
This loan would incur a penalty if it's prepaid. They're not if it's prepaid in full. It can be prepaid in full. It can be prepaid at any time. What FHA doesn't allow is a penalty for prepaying.
Okay, I'm going to say it back just to make sure I got it right, okay?
Yep.
The government will approve, you can get PMI insurance with the federal government.
No, it's not called PMI because what does the P stand for in PMI?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Private. It's just called mortgage insurance.
Okay, mortgage insurance. So if I'm buying a home, maybe I shouldn't even say it. Maybe you should say it and I can write it down so I can stop thinking.
Well, no, it's okay. If a borrower is purchasing a property and they want to or need to obtain mortgage insurance from FHA, the lender is going to have to comply with certain rules. One of those rules is that the lender has to make sure the owner is going to occupy the property, that the person they're lending the money to is going to live in the property.
Yeah.
The lender has to make sure that their note is a fixed rate note. Otherwise, FHA will not approve the insurance. The lender has to make sure that the note does not contain a prepayment penalty clause, which is a penalty that borrowers have to pay for paying their loan off early. In other words, FHA is saying, if you want to charge people a penalty for paying off early, we're not going to give you insurance on that loan.
And that doesn't mean that you can't prepay it. Is that correct?
That means the opposite. A prepayment penalty clause is a penalty for prepaying, right? So when a loan doesn't have a prepayment penalty clause, it means they're welcoming an early payment of it.
Right, meaning I can pay it off, but I'm going to have to pay the fine to do so.
No, there is no fine because they're saying no prepayment penalty. There is no fine to pay off an FHA loan early. They don't allow that.
Okay. Okay.
So Shirley, you need to go back and look at, you're thinking of things in exactly, as my grandfather would say, the bass-ackwards way. You're thinking that a prepayment penalty clause means I can pay it off early. It's the exact opposite. A prepayment penalty clause means if you pay it off early, you're going to be what? Penalized. So if it doesn't have a prepayment penalty clause, you can do what?
It means you can early.
It means you can pay it off early. That's all it is. And so FHA loans do not have a prepayment penalty clause, which means they can be what?
Paid off early.
Paid off early.
Okay.
Better now?
Yeah, I don't know why I was a butthead on that.
That's all right. It happens. It happens. And sometimes once it gets log jammed in there, it's hard to get it turned the opposite
Well, that's
direction.
why I said I'm going to stop talking.
No, that's all right.
No, you
You're
need to
good.
get it.
You're good. Look at this other one over here. Here's a real, see if you were paying attention the other day. It says for FHA to provide mortgage insurance, that loan must be assumable. So what other clause does that mean?
Alienation clause.
FHA loans will not have what?
An alienation clause.
Alienation clause. FHA loans will not have an alienation clause in them. Everybody good with that statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. And again, FHA can't force the lender to do these things, but they can simply say, if you don't, we won't give you the what? Insurance. And therefore, the lenders do follow through because they need the insurance. If you just happen to see, this is not something you need to study on, but if you happen to see numbers next to loans on the test, don't worry about it. An FHA loan's an FHA loan. They just have different loan numbers for different types of properties. They have a single family FHA loan. They have a condominium FHA loan. They have a townhouse FHA loan, but they will not test you on which one is which. They're not going to give you the 203B loan is this and the 204C loan is that. What I'm saying is just don't freak out. FHA loans all have the same rules, folks. So if you see FHA 203B loan, just ignore the 203B part. What do you care about?
The
FHA part. Because they all have the same rules. They all have the same rules. For your purposes, anyway. They're slightly different, but the differences are not things you're going to be tested on. And just as a reminder, the FHA loan, like every other loan, is not a fully insured loan. Because no loan is what?
Fully insured.
No loan is fully insured. Just doesn't happen. Okay? So I think we're going to pause right there and take a lunch break. And when we come back, we're going to jump into the next group of government-backed loans. Very similar to FHA loans. In fact, almost all the same rules apply, but there are going to be some slight differences. And that's what you need to start learning to look out for. Why does this different loan program exist? Well, there must be some slight difference in the rules. What are some things you think that we just talked about that might get flexed? I'm not saying they will or will not, but what are some things that might get flexed a little bit as we go to a different type of government-backed loan?
Applies to veterans.
The down payment.
Down payment might get flexed a little bit. Okay, what else?
Insurance.
The way the insurance works might get flexed a little bit. What else?
Penalties and clauses.
Maybe the penalties are different. Maybe they're the same. Okay. How about what else? Was there another rule in there that we talked about?
How it's appraised?
The clause.
Who can qualify might be different. How about FHA loans? Who has to live in the property?
The borrower.
The borrower. Could that rule change for the next type of government-backed loan?
Yes.
So what we're going to do when we come back is we're going to constantly compare. Okay, why would somebody do this version of a government-backed loan versus the other version? And the answer is not because they're a veteran. Because they're a veteran might be the difference between them qualifying for it. That does not mean that's the difference in the two loans, though. Does that make sense for everybody? The loans have different rules, and some of those rules are going to be better for the borrower in VA loans, and that's what we need to focus on. What are the differences? Why? Because otherwise, every veteran would just get what?
A VA loan.
Well, if VA loans weren't better, you may as well just get what?
FHA loan.
An FHA loan. If the VA loan didn't have improvements over some of those qualifications and some of those rules, it wouldn't exist. So it's always important to remember we're coming back to that comparison constantly of these loan types. Button there. All right. Before our lunch break, we started to talk about different loan types, and we covered two giant categories of loans. We covered conventional loans, and remind me again, what was the definition of a conventional loan? There's lots of criteria and characteristics.
Government backed.
Government backed, very good. And that can be either insured with private mortgage insurance or uninsured with no insurance at all.
Right.
And then we talked about the FHA insured loan, which is the first example of what we call a government backed loan. The first example of a loan where the government provides insurance. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you look at when you look at the VA loan program, the VA loan program is a loan that is only available to a certain group. A certain group. And that group is going to be people who have served in the military. People who have served active duty in the armed services are going to be qualified for VA loans. Hey, Seth, can you pause it for just a second? I'm going to go get them. I apologize. So the VA loan program, and I apologize for the interruption, but thank you for your patience. The VA loan program is one that is only available to certain members of the public. It is not available to everybody like the FHA loan is. FHA loan, if you qualify, you can get it based on financials. The VA loan, not only do you have to qualify based on financials, but you have to be a member of a certain group of individuals. And that group of individuals is anybody who has been honorably discharged from the military, or is a current service member in the military, or is retired from the military, generally speaking. So when you look at the VA loan, think of it like, okay, it's not just financial qualifications, which is what most loans are about. It's also membership in this group. You have to be a member of this group in order to qualify. VA, again, is not making loans, just like FHA is not making loans. In fact, VA loans function very, very similarly to FHA loans. There's not a ton of difference between the VA loan and the FHA loan. But what we are going to do is focus on what are the differences between the VA loan and the FHA loan program. And one of the big ones, in fact, the biggest one, is the very first thing out of the gate. What on that screen jumps out at you as being very different than the FHA loan program?
100% loan to value.
100% loan to value, absolutely. The 100% loan to value option is simply not there for those who are doing FHA insured loans. If somebody is doing an FHA insured loan, we know they have to put down at least 3.5%, or come up with 3.5%. Maybe they can be gifted it by a family member, or so otherwise. But as far as the actual FHA loan, 96.5% is the maximum loan to value. Whereas VA loans stretch that out to 100% loan to value. So that's an obvious benefit to the borrower right there. Now they can, in theory, purchase a property without making a down payment. That's the biggest single difference. So if you have someone who has served in the military and they are looking at doing a mortgage note, and they don't want to do much of a down payment, they may as well do a zero down payment and do the VA loan. That does not mean that everybody who has access to VA loans should do a VA loan. Like my dad is a good example. In fact, both my dad and my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a retired Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. My dad's former Army, was a drill instructor. So when you look at both of those people, obviously they both have access to VA loans. Neither one of them has a VA loan. And the reason for that is, remember, VA is providing what service? The same one that FHA provides. What is VA providing? Insurance. Insurance, folks, always has a cost associated with it. So it's not necessarily true that just because someone can get a VA loan that it makes sense for them to. If they want to put 20% down, they're probably not going to do a VA loan. They're probably going to do what? Conventional loans, so they don't have mortgage insurance at all. So I don't want you to go into this thinking, oh, it's just automatically better for someone with military service to use a VA loan. It's an option they should look at because it's available to them. This is all going to be very personalized as we go through this. Look at that second bullet point there, because that's a big one, especially in today's environment. There are buyers right now, or at least recently, who have consistently had to negotiate prices that were well above the seller's list price. How many of you have a friend, or you saw on Facebook, or you saw some news article in the last couple of years about people paying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more than the seller's list price to buy a property? Right? Rebecca. When that happens, Rebecca said, I am that friend. When that happens, when that negotiation happens, remember that bidding war happened between buyers and sellers. It was a buyer and a seller who came to that price. The lender still hasn't had their say about the value of that property at that point in time. Just because the buyer and the seller have agreed on a number does not mean the lender will agree that that number is a reasonable number. Does that make sense for everybody? The lender's going to have what process done to make sure they're not over lending?
The appraisal.
Appraisal. And it is very possible, folks, that that appraisal comes in less than the sales price that the two parties have agreed to. So look at Myra. Myra said we were under contract for $227,000, and then it was listed at $215,000. They went under contract at $227,000, and then it appraised at $217,000. Everybody follow that progression of things? House is on the market for $215,000. They negotiated $227,000, and I have people all the time that say, "Why would you do that?" Well, if you're losing out on everything you make an offer on, eventually you start going higher, right? If that's just the market, that's the market. So for whatever reason, they negotiated a price of $227,000. Well, here comes the lender having their appraisal done. The appraiser is going to give their opinion of the property's value. Is that always going to be as high as the buyer and seller's opinion of the property's value? No, not necessarily. And the lender is not going to base their loan on the buyer and seller opinion of value. They're going to base it on the appraiser's opinion of value. So this is where that second statement right there really comes in. It says the sales price can exceed the appraised value. Was it possible for Myra to pay $227,000 for that house, even though it only appraised for $217,000? Is that possible?
Yeah, I was just trying to get the loan
Absolutely.
above it. Yeah.
But the loan is going to be based on which one?
The appraisal.
The appraisal. And what that means is when we say you can borrow 100% loan to value, that does not mean, because this is going to come as a test question, I'm going to try to slide it past you. Does that mean you automatically don't have to make a down payment, folks?
No.
No, it does not. Because 100% of 217 is 217. But how much was Myra paying for the property?
227.
227. Somebody's got to come up with $10,000 extra. Does that make sense for everybody now? So I don't want you to think that VA loans mean always no down payment. They mean most of the time no down payment. How many of you now recognize that in a VA deal, everybody's going to be sweating that appraisal till it comes back?
Yeah.
Big time. Big time. Because that's going to dictate whether or not this borrower has to bring a down payment.
So Travis, based on what you just said, maybe they can answer this. Can a VA borrower have a loan balance that exceeds 100% of the appraised property's value?
Well, why don't we hang on to that one for just a second and talk. How about, let's ask it this way. Can they borrow more than the property's value?
No.
I think.
No.
No. A VA borrower cannot borrow more than the value of the property. They can pay more than the value of the property, but they can't borrow more than that. Does that make sense for everybody?
Right.
Okay. So keep that in mind. Now, the VA appraisal process is referred to as a certificate of reasonable value. You may see that on the test. I don't think it's going to be anything detailed. That's just the way VA refers to their appraisals. They call it the certificate of reasonable value. The borrower can pay whatever amount they want to pay for the property, but they're only going to be able to borrow the amount on that CRV, the amount on that appraisal. And that has to come as cash out of pocket if there is any overage on that. Are we okay so far on the rules of VA loans?
Yes.
Okay. So they don't automatically mean no money out of pocket. They might mean that. They do mean that you can borrow 100% of the appraised value of the property. Now, veterans are said to have an entitlement, and this starts to get to Shannon's question earlier. Shannon asked at the break, could a veteran use a VA loan more than one time? What she was really asking was, Can a veteran use their VA entitlement more than one time? Can a veteran obtain multiple VA loans?
Yes.
And the answer is yes, a veteran can obtain multiple VA loans. In fact, a veteran can have multiple VA loans at the same time. But what they can't do is exceed their entitlement. So think of it this way. If you tell your child you can have 2 sodas a day, that's their entitlement. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
You can have 2 sodas a day. It doesn't matter if they have both of them at breakfast, if they have half of one in the morning and half of one at lunch and another half of one in the snack and half of one at night, as long as they don't exceed what?
2.
2 sodas all day. That's their entitlement. The entitlement for a veteran is a dollar amount. Like, for example, my father-in-law's VA entitlement is $800,000. What that means is he is entitled to borrow up to a maximum of $800,000 with a VA-backed loan. Everybody okay with that statement?
Yeah.
That means he could buy an $800,000 property, and that would use up the entitlement. Could he also buy a $500,000 property and a $300,000 property and use the entitlement that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he could. What he couldn't. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So it's pretty much like they do everything with the VA or military. Like, for school, when you get $5,000, they don't care how you use it or what schools. It's only $5,000. So like
that's it.
It's like your father has the $800,000. They don't care how you use it, but that's all you got.
That's exactly right. Now, okay. Heather asked, is that a lifetime max? And the answer is no, and we're going to talk about why. Because here's the thing about using your VA entitlement. Remember, they're not giving you that money. It's a loan. And what do you eventually do with a loan?
You have to
pay it back.
You pay it back. Guess what happens to the veteran's entitlement when they pay the loan back?
Reset.
It restarts.
It resets. It's restored. That's exactly right. So as that veteran pays off one VA loan, they get the entitlement dollars back available to them again so that they can go. The idea here is, could a veteran buy one house, sell it, use those funds, buy the next house, take out a new VA loan, and keep going, so on and so forth, the rest of their life?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I'm doing, actually, Everett. I'm a veteran, and I've used it on my last 3 homes.
Okay. There you go. And so you're basically just trading one entitlement for the next, right? You're trading your entitlement back in, get a new loan, pay that one off, do it again, right? And they can do that as many times as they want to. Does that make sense for everybody about the reusing of the entitlement?
Yeah.
What the veteran cannot do is exceed their entitlement at any one point in time. They cannot have outstanding VA loans that exceed their maximum entitlement. Erica asked, what determines entitlement amount? Rank, time, and service. Yes, both. It's about rank and time. Yeah. We'll set the entitlement amount. Basically, when every service member is discharged, they will be issued a statement of entitlement by the Veterans Administration, and they can
get $200.
Okay. Now, when you again, the entitlement does come back, and that's here in that last bullet point. If you repay the VA loan, look at this one. I guarantee you're going to see a test question here. Now, the top one's important too. There's no prepayment penalties on VA loans, but that's the same as FHA loans. The second one is also the same as FHA loans, but people don't think it should be. In their mind, VA loans should only be assumed if you're also a what? Veteran. But that is not the way it works. If the loan is assumable, folks, the loan is assumable by anyone. And so VA loans, when I say they're assumable, what does that mean? Could Seth, who does not have a VA entitlement, actually end up with a VA loan? Is it possible for him to end up with a VA loan?
Yes.
It is. It is. If he were to purchase a property from a seller who had a VA loan and that seller were to agree to allow him to assume that loan, Seth can do that because it is a fully assumable loan.
How do you know I wasn't in the military?
Okay? Does that make sense? Because you've told me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Jordan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, what would be the risk of them civilian having a VA loan? They got to get it from somewhere. So what would be the risk of them or the person that the entitlement is owed to? What would be the risk of that?
Here's the only risk of allowing somebody to assume your VA loan. Your entitlement is tied to the loan, not to you owing the money. So as long as that loan is outstanding, the veteran's entitlement is tied up in the loan. So a veteran who is deciding to allow someone to assume their VA loan pretty much is deciding that they're not going to go do what themselves, folks.
Get another one.
They're not going to go get another one themselves because their entitlement's going to stay tied up in the one they just allowed to be assumed. So whether this makes sense for the veteran or not is going to be very much an individual decision. Now, I've had people who did that because they wanted to help out a family member. I've had people who bought a house and maybe they're going to sell it to their nephew, and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to buy another house right now anyway. I'm just going to let my nephew assume the VA loan because it's better. They can do that if that's what they want to do. I've seen people do it because they can sell the house for more money. Because again, the person taking it over wants that loan so badly. So it really is a very personalized choice. But to answer your question, Jordan, the risk is the entitlement's going to stay tied up until that loan gets paid off.
Okay.
Okay. So far, so good?
So far, good.
There was a question in the chat. It says, I know in assumable loans, the seller, conventional loans. Okay, I'm sorry. I am not liking anything about this because it's scaring me. So I know in assumable loans, the seller has to approve it. Does the VA also have to approve it?
So here, it's an interesting question. And the answer is no, the VA does not have to approve a VA loan being assumed. Who does have to approve any loan being assumed?
Lender.
The lender.
Lender and the seller. That's exactly right. You got your buyer has to agree, the lender has to agree, and the seller. Remember, VA is not the lender here. They didn't make this loan. They're just insuring it.
If you ever short sale on yours, is that still up to the lender or?
It is. It is up to the lender, but it's also VA might choose not to issue insurance for somebody who has defaulted on a VA loan in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a gray area that they have some discretion over.
Gotcha.
Are we all good so far on VA loans? Because there's only one other little thing I need to talk about, but it is a confusing one. So I want to make sure you're good so far on the VA loans and the processes.
I was disconnected. Did you mention the one that asked you about using it? Like I said, we're still in Fayetteville.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So VA loans do not require owner occupancy in most cases. So generally speaking, yes, your husband will be able to use it in a separate location. And I'll tell you the reason for that. Think of how often a veteran might purchase a home, especially one that's still in the military. They might purchase a home and then get a PCS, change of location, change of station, where they have to go somewhere else across the country or across the world, and they're stuck with a house that they have to either turn around and sell really quickly or rent out. The VA loan gives them the flexibility to rent it out.
Yeah.
Okay, because that didn't make sense to me. I don't know someone had told me that, and I was like, well, he's in Destin, Florida, and you're in Fayetteville. You're gonna have to move to Destin to buy that house. He can't do it for you in Fayetteville.
He can do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No, I had that same issue with my adult sons who still live in New York City. And I bought a retirement house here in North Carolina. So I used the entitlement for both of those homes.
Okay.
So you got your entitlement spread between New York and North Carolina. You got some entitlement used in New York and some used in North Carolina.
That is correct.
There you go.
Because I told him to get a condo in Destin because it's just him there in Destin or, somewhere near Eglin Air Force Base where he is. And let us get the house here since I have the kids. And I was like, it should be a way you could still,
Absolutely.
do it that way. So, but thank
Absolutely.
you.
Now, there was a question here privately in the chat, Travis, and I think this is probably a really good point to throw it in there. So I don't think she cares. Rose asked, in a transaction, is there any reason why a seller wouldn't accept a certain type of loan from a buyer?
Yes. So the answer to the question is just a blunt yes. Certain loans are harder to close than others. When sellers are negotiating and deciding what offers to accept, obviously they have the freedom to accept or reject whatever offer they want. One of the things that sellers will always weigh in their mind is what is the likelihood that this loan is going to close? And traditionally, there are certain loans that have a higher likelihood of not getting across the finish line. Generally speaking, the more risky your borrower is, the more of a chance of something going wrong. I mean, people who are putting 20 and 30% down on a house, if they have a little hiccup with one paycheck or they have a big expense, it generally doesn't mess with their debt to income ratios or anything like that. But if you have somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck and they've been scrambling trying to get qualified and all of a sudden their dog gets sick and they got to spend $1,500 at the vet, could that just be enough to change their debt to income ratios and throw them out of qualification on the loan?
Yes.
Right? And so sellers will sometimes look at certain loan types and go, well, I know that people who are getting those loans are generally a little bit more risky, and so there's a higher risk of it not closing. And so they might put a preference on cash or conventional uninsured loans just because they feel more confident that that will make it to closing. And sellers can certainly always do that. I mean, that's up to a seller to decide. Natalie?
Travis, I just have a quick question about assuming, because I'm just a little confused on it. If a seller and a lender agree to letting a borrower/buyer assume the loan, then the debt does not clear from the seller?
It does. An assumption clears the debt from the seller. The seller no longer has responsibility for the debt.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, assumption transfers the debt from the seller to the buyer. The buyer takes over payments, they take over responsibility for the debt.
So in that case, the entitlement in a VA loan, if a VA loan is assumed, then their entitlement restarts for the seller.
No, because the loan is still outstanding and the entitlement is tied up in the loan. It doesn't matter that the debt has moved from the person. The fact that the debt still exists means the entitlement is still tied up in the loan. That entitlement's only going to reset and go back to that original borrower when that loan is paid off, which would be paid off by the new owner. We hope. We hope. And the other big risk there is, what if they don't pay it off? What if they default?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What if they does that mess up your future entitlement?
It does mess up your future entitlement. Absolutely. It can potentially mess up your future entitlement. So that's the risk that the veteran takes in allowing that. So the next thing we need to talk about is one that I really think they're going to ask you on the test about VA loans. I think this is a slide you need to start. Jordan, did you have a question before we talk about this?
You're muted, Jordan.
I do have a question. As a broker or representing a client, would this be an area where we should extend our knowledge and help our clients make a solid decision on loans?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we owe them advice about financing and all the different options available to them. The other thing I'm just going to mention here, folks, here's the best advice you'll ever give a client about financing. Get pre-qualified. Get qualified by as many lenders as you possibly can.
Yes, and I was scared when my friend said, go get pre-qualified. And she's like, you can. I said, well, we want to go through Navy Federal. She's like, well, go through Cornerstone or whoever, the other bank here. I was like, won't that hurt us by going through? She's like, no. So that's not true.
Here's why I just told you that and what Shannon's talking about. Folks, federal law. When you fill out a mortgage note application, they're going to pull your credit. And yes, that does hurt your credit slightly to have your credit pulled. But that also opens a 30-day shopping window where you can have your credit pulled by as many mortgage lenders as you want. You can apply with 100 different lenders during the next 30 days, and none of those count as a credit pull.
I got to write this stuff down.
Okay? So from the first moment you fill out a mortgage application, you got 30 days now to apply with as many lenders as you want to with no downside. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, you're getting it pulled anyways.
And so why wouldn't you go ahead and apply with a bunch and then compare what they're offering you? You know, don't ever just say I'm qualified with one and not shop it around. You don't know that that's the best deal that's out there for you. Now, with VA loans, we already established that the veteran can borrow 100% of the appraised value of the property. That's not in question. But loans have closing costs. We've already talked about a couple of those closing costs. What are those couple of those closing costs we talked about earlier?
Origination fees.
Origination fees and potentially what?
Points.
Discount points. There's also going to be other closing costs, folks. The cost of an appraisal is a closing cost. The cost of closing attorney's fees, that's a closing cost. There are lots of costs associated with closing a loan. VA is unique in this regard. VA will allow the borrower to essentially take out two loans. I'll try to explain it this way and see if this helps. VA will essentially allow the borrower to take out two loans. They will let the borrower borrow 100% of the appraised value of the property. Everybody good with that statement? They will also allow the borrower to borrow their closing costs rather than pay them out of pocket. And if the borrower chooses to do that, the VA is going to lump it all together in one loan balance. But I want you to think for a second about what that means about that loan balance. If I've already borrowed 100% of the property's value, which is the maximum they'll let me borrow in that loan that I'm purchasing the property with. Everybody good?
Yeah.
And then I additionally borrow my closing costs and they lump it all together. Is my loan balance going to be less than, equal to, or more than the appraised value of the property?
More than.
It's going to be more than, because I borrowed the appraised value and then I also borrowed the what?
Closing costs.
The closing costs. So you have to be really careful about how they word this on a test. True or false statement? The maximum a veteran can borrow on a home purchase is 100% of the property's appraised value. True or false?
False.
That's true.
I say true.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because the maximum they can borrow on the home purchase is 100% of the property's appraised value.
I'm glad you did that.
That's good.
That's good.
True or false? A veteran can have a loan balance that exceeds 100% of the property's appraised value.
That is true.
True.
Right.
That's the one that's true. So again,
Not
true or
borrowing.
false? A veteran can borrow for a home purchase more than 100% of the property's appraised value. True or false?
False.
False. 100% is the maximum they can borrow for the purchase. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Purchase, yeah.
But they can end up with a balance that's more than that because they've been separately allowed in a whole separate deal to borrow what?
The closing costs.
Closing costs. So when you look at the total amount they owe, it can exceed 100. So let's just show you what we mean by that. We'll use easy numbers. Let's say we are purchasing the property. We're purchasing the property for $100,000. And it appraises exactly for $100,000. So they're borrowing what? $100,000 loan. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Easy peasy, simple, straightforward. The lender tells that borrower, okay, you're going to have $3,500 in closing cost to get this thing closed. Would you like, and this is the only loan that you get this question, folks, because any other loan, what would the lender expect you to do when they told you there was $3,500 in closing costs?
Make a payment up front.
Pay them up front. The VA loan is the only loan where you get this question. Would you like to pay your closing costs up front, or would you like to take out a separate loan for your closing costs and borrow them as well? It's the only loan that asks that question. So if this borrower says, you know what, I want to borrow the closing costs as well, they're going to end up with a $3,500 closing cost loan.
Higher interest rate?
No, it's going to be at the same interest rate. Because as soon as they make that separate loan, what is VA going to do with the balance?
Roll it together.
They're going to roll it together for a total loan balance of 103,500 total. Oops, sorry.
Are VA loans more likely to, like historically, are they foreclosed or short saled more?
I don't think so. I think they're probably actually come out on the positive end of that because, and I'd say one major reason for that is a lot, even though veterans don't have to, a lot of veterans choose to go through the credit unions associated with like USAA, for example, or Navy Federal Credit Union, and they will take their money first. As soon as that paycheck hits, they'll take it out. So it's the same reason that State Employees Credit Union has a lower rate of foreclosure. They're not waiting for the payment. They're just taking it out of your account. I would say it's probably a lower rate if I had to guess off the top of my head. Deani?
Does the closing costs have anything to do with like the entitlement amount? So say if you
That's a great question. It's the same question Brian just asked in the chat. The closing cost has nothing to do with the entitlement. So let's say this borrower, I'm glad y'all asked that. Great question from both of you. Let's say this borrower had a maximum entitlement of $100,000. Could they end up with this balance of 103,500? What do y'all think?
Yes.
Yes. Because the entitlement only refers to the loan for the purchase of the property. The closing cost is a completely separate option. It doesn't count toward the entitlement. It doesn't count toward the 100% loan to value. It's just a completely separate option. It's almost like a box that the veteran checks after they've already signed off on the rest of the loan. It's like simply, okay, now here's your closing costs. Do you want to pay them or do you want us just to roll them back into that loan you just took out? Everybody okay with that? Now, what option do you think most veterans choose?
Roll it in.
Roll it in separate, yeah.
They roll it in. They roll it in. And I would like to point out this because this is what really does make a VA loan unique. Assuming that the property appraises for the purchase price, does this not allow a purchase that is literally zero out of pocket for that purchaser? Yes. They're borrowing 100% of the purchase price. They're borrowing their closing costs. This is a zero out of pocket purchase. And that is what is exceptionally unique about the VA loan.
I've actually used that on a property in New York. I rolled the closing costs back in, no money out of pocket, but the lender still wanted to see $5,000 in savings.
They wanted to see that you had it, even though they didn't make you spend it.
Correct.
There you go. It's interesting. Amy, we will not specifically cover what an appraisal addendum is because, quite honestly, we only talk about forms and contracts that are very standardized, and that's most likely something that somebody's had an attorney draft. But no, we won't get into that. Deani said, "So is this going to make the monthly payments higher?" It will, because doesn't that $3,500 also have to be paid back, folks?
Yes.
Right. So obviously, this is going to make the monthly payments somewhat higher because you are making payments on a larger amount of money.
I was talking about the zero down payment.
I'm sorry?
I said I was talking about the fact that they made a zero down payment. Like how he was just saying he didn't put any money down, but they were
right. Well, but Deani, you're making it harder than it needs to be. What makes a payment higher? The fact that you owe more what?
Money.
And the less money you pull out of pocket means you leave that closing owing more what? Money. So put them together. If you choose the route where you're not taking money out of your pocket, is that going to make the payment higher?
Yes.
Of course it is, because you're not paying any money up front. Right? Okay. Rose, the interest rate on the loan has nothing to do with VA. And see, that's where we have to constantly correct and go back. VA can do whatever VA wants to do, but they can't impact the interest rate. They can't impact the loan itself. because VA's not doing what, folks?
Loaning money.
They're not loaning money. They're simply providing what?
Insurance.
Insurance on the loan. That's all they're doing. The banks set the interest rates, not VA, right? Generally speaking, VA loans are going to have very competitive interest rates to other products.
That is huge though, because somebody else messaged me something to that effect, and I was like, I'm a little nervous by that.
Yeah, very, very competitive interest rates. The other thing to understand about VA loans, and this is a pretty big advantage, though it's probably not going to be tested heavily, so I don't want to spend time on it. The mortgage insurance for VA loans is a one-time thing. It is not a monthly ongoing. You know how when we looked at private mortgage insurance, we said it would be, like $205 a month. And we looked at the FHA mortgage insurance, it's going to be $600 a month. That's a monthly ongoing, you pay. VA insurance is one time up front. Those closing costs that we're talking about right there, guess what's included in those closing costs?
Insurance.
The insurance. And it's a one-time expense.
That's what I'm talking about.
The veteran will not pay mortgage insurance from that point forward.
Was that, remember how you said it was 100 for PMI or 100 or 200 and then 600 for the FHA?
Yep.
So that's totally, so the VA, they have did you just say a one time and that's
One time. That's it.
Oh, so that's way better than FHA.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's all kinds of things that make it even better, which you don't need to know for test taking purposes. One such example is the current policy is anybody with a service related disability, the mortgage insurance, the one-time mortgage insurance is waived. It's not charged at all. So if you have somebody who has a service related disability, they can get a VA loan. They can do this at 100% loan to value. They can roll their closing costs in and pay no mortgage insurance because it'll be waived. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different little things, but those are policies that change over time. That's why we stick to just the stuff that is always true of VA loans. Everybody good with that? All of that. Okay. So that is it really, folks, for covering the main types of loans. Yes, there are other types of loans, but we're not going to spend significant time on them because they are what? What does that word say right there?
Uncommon.
They are uncommon. They are uncommon. These are not loans that happen very often. Purchase money mortgages. We mentioned that earlier today. Same thing as seller financing. What's happening there?
Seller is financing.
The seller is becoming the bank. The seller is becoming the bank. Seth, you want to answer that question in the chat because I just answered it before. So if you thank you. Other uncommon loan types. There are loans available specifically for rural areas of the country, which are government-backed loans that actually are backed by the United States Department of Agriculture. You don't need to know where those loans would be available. You just need to know that a USDA loan is simply a loan that's only available for properties located where? Rural areas. So are you going to be able to get a USDA loan on a house in downtown Raleigh? No, you will not. Do you think you'd be able to get a USDA loan on a house in Chatham County?
Maybe.
Yeah,
In rural parts of Chatham County, right? How about, let me try it this way. Do you think you'd be able to get a USDA loan on a property in Wilson County?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know where it is.
It's all rural. Yes. So yeah, it's designed to help incentivize people to move to rural areas. That's the USDA loan. Construction loans, here's what you need to write. One word. Risky. Let me tell you why. What does it sound like the loan is being used for when we say it's a construction loan? What does it sound like it is being used for? What is the purpose of the loan?
Building
the property. Why would that be risky?
A lot of things.
Building a house.
A lot of things can happen.
Things like
may blow up, but
Because it's not built.
Let me ask it another way.
there's no collateral.
There you go. There's no collateral, or the collateral is just dirt, right? because they're loaning the money before the home has been what? Built. That is inherently much more risky for the bank. Does that make sense for everybody? And that makes these loans much harder to come by. Now, of course, you're still mortgaging the land, but we all know that it's very unlikely that the land is going to have enough value by itself to satisfy this note if it doesn't get paid. And so most construction loans are very risky and therefore very hard to come by. Now, I don't want you to think of buying a house from, Drees Homes or MI Homes or some builder as a construction loan. It's not. When you go buy a house from MI Homes, the minute you borrow the money, your house is already what?
Built.
It's built. That's not a construction loan. Who probably did have a construction loan, though, to get it built?
Your
Builder.
Themselves did. The builder themselves had the construction loan. Everybody see the difference?
Yep.
And so very risky. Don't worry about blanket mortgages. Again, these are developers' loans. It gets to this idea of a loan that can be attached to more than one piece of property. We know generally mortgages are only attached to one piece of property. I don't think you're going to see that. Package loans package up the land and the real estate with personal property. If you want to include a boat, you can't do that with a normal mortgage. Because what is the collateral on a normal mortgage? It's what?
The land.
The land and everything attached to the land.
What about a goat?
A boat or a goat?
Joking. I am joking.
Or even a swimming pool float. Are we going to just play rhyming all day long? You know? Anything not attached, if you want to include it as part of the deal, you're probably going to have to do a package loan, most likely. Now, they will generally let you get a buy with little things like a refrigerator or a washer and dryer, but anything past that, I had somebody say, well, they got a nice classic car in the garage. Can I include that? Yeah, as long as you get what kind of loan?
Package.
A package loan. Package loan. Okay. Again, very, very uncommon. I've given you some other specialty loan types here. We're not going to talk about them. Just at your own pace, take a look at them, especially if you see a quiz question about them. If you see a quiz question about them, that means you freak out. That just means you should be able to go back and refer back to this list and see which one it is. It's meant to be targeted. Can you look at the information? But the big types of loans we've covered, folks. That's it. We've covered. The only other one I will mention here, or vocabulary I will mention, is the idea of subprime financing. Prime financing are the loans that we just spent all that time talking about. Conventional loans are prime loans. Conventional uninsured is a prime loan. Conventional insured is a prime loan. FHA is a prime loan. VA is a prime loan. These are your mainstream loans. Loans made to people who do not qualify for any of those other ones are considered subprime loans. By their very sort of essence, folks, are subprime loans going to be more or less risky for the lender than prime loans?
Way more.
Way more risky, because these are the people who don't qualify for some other reason. Let me tell you who gets a subprime loan. Somebody who goes to the lender and the lender says, okay, how much do you make? Well, I make $200,000 a year. Great, you're qualified. As long as you can send us your tax returns showing you make $200,000 a year and your pay stub showing you make $200,000 a year, we'll get your loan going. Well, about that whole tax return pay stub thing, I make $200,000 a year, but my tax return don't exactly say I make $200,000. Subprime. You're a subprime borrower. These are people who cannot justify loans under the normal processes. And so therefore they are more risky. They are more risky. Your produce salesman, and I don't mean the one at the grocery store, I mean the one who sells your herbs in the parking lot, probably gonna have to get a subprime loan.
Like basil,
yes,
pesto.
Exactly, that one. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the one. Those are loan types, folks. That's it for Unit 6.2.